Has begun.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our April 8th Town Council meeting. I'd like to officially call this to order at 6 p.m. And could we please have roll call?
Yes, Madam Mayor,
Here.
Councilman Winkler,
Present.
Councilman Trollinger,
Present.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward is absent. Councilman Jenkins.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And what a great crowd we have today. Would you all please stand? And we are going to have the amazing 9-10-year-old relay team start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I love that version too. You can start with, I pledge. All right. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and if anybody would like to do a solo, I will. No? All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. I appreciate that. Council, if you have had an opportunity to look at the agenda, I will look for an approval of the meeting agenda.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented for April 8th.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 25th. I will entertain a motion. So moved. If anyone is so moved, I should say. Or not.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from March 25th as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to public comment. If you would like to speak, we have 3 speakers signed up right now. Well, 2 speakers, I think. Mike, it doesn't say yes, but Michael, Paul, and Patrick, if you would like to speak, Michael first, please state your name, whether you live in the incorporated town limits, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Michael Medatic. I live at 6820 Traumatic Place, just outside the limit of the town, off of Darley Drive, if you're not familiar with where that is. I'm here tonight to bring your attention to the ongoing sewage problems at our La Plata Sewage Treatment Facility. I'm uniquely situated in that the stream of concern leaves La Plata, goes past the sewage plant, across Quillwood Parkway, across Walnut, and from Walnut all the way to the valley, it goes through the woods, with the exception it goes through my backyard. And I'm the only one that can view the stream without even getting out of my house. This particular episode started just before Christmas in December this past year. The stream quality was completely gray. When I say completely gray, I mean very gray. And there was sludge built up along the sides of the stream. Right? I called La Plata Sewage Facility, was my first and obvious thing to do, and there was no one there. So that's problem number 1. I immediately called the Public Works, La Plata Public Works, talked to a gentleman there, and he said he had the home phone numbers for the folks that were supposed to be there, and he contacted them for me. All right. I tried to work with the people from the Plata Sewage plant for about a month with nothing fixed, absolutely zero. Well, I shouldn't say that. The stream quality did not improve. I don't know what they did at the plant. Let's say it that way. Okay. After about a month, and I would say the date would be approximately January 27th, I filed a complaint with Maryland Department of Environment. Okay, I talked to a Miss Sarah McGee, filed the complaint of the poor quality of stream, my beliefs coming from the sewage treatment facility in La Plata, and ongoing, by the way, ongoing all the way to the Potomac River. They assigned an investigator of Deshaun Hunter. Deshaun Hunter came down, did the investigation. He came to my house, looked at the quality of the stream. Now, each of you should have received 3 emails from me, right? The first set of emails was pictures, all right? That very first set of pictures in that email, if you looked at those, that was the quality of the stream after working with the La Plata town for a month, okay, which was horrible, all right? Mr. Hunter looked at the sludge and so forth along the side of the stream. We dug a little bit of it up, all right? He said, this has been ongoing for a very long time. And he knew that by the color of the sludge. All right, as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, it gets blacker and blacker. And he said it's been going on for a while. He filed a report. I have a copy of his report, and I'd like to leave this with you all. Okay, who do I give it to? Okay, basically saying that the sewage treatment plant had some foam in it and some what he called FOD, F-O-D. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming that's foreign matter. All right, but it's in the stream. I have, since that time forward, I've worked with Maryland Department of Environment. That long series of emails that you got from me was the communication between myself and the Maryland Department of Environment. And the pictures, the rest of the pictures that you have there correspond to the dates when I sent something off to them. So you can cross-reference and see what was going on. The stream quality has not improved very much at all. It has improved some, I'll give it that, but not very much at all. To the extent of this past Thursday, your third email, which was a video, okay, which I walked all the way up to the plant and took a video of the output of the plant, and you can see the gray water coming directly out of the plant. Now, I've tried my best to contact all the people that I know of. I've contacted the Port Tobacco River Conservatory, all right, and they're the one that urged me to come here tonight and talk to you guys. I've talked to the Potomac River Keepers Association, who's responsible for the quality of the water in the Potomac River, all right, and they are all extremely concerned of what's been going on, and I don't know what to do about it. I wish I could wave a wand and fix it, but I can't. All right, so this is my opinion coming up here, so just bear with me. I can only come to conclude there are 3 things that could possibly be wrong at the plant. Okay. First thing, and the most scary in my mind, is we've overburdened the plant. There's been a bunch of growth in La Plata, all right, and we're just putting too much into the plant that the plant can't handle anymore. I don't know if that's the case. That's an opinion. Okay. Second thing is there's been a mechanical failure that's not been addressed, not been found, or they've elected not to address it. Can't say any more than that. And the third thing, obviously, would be a competency issue. Do the people at the plant really understand what they're doing and how to manage a sewage treatment plant? I do not. All I can talk to you about is the quality of the water coming down the stream. So where do we go from here? I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing and reporting to the Maryland Department of the Environment. I will be glad to come back and talk to you folks anytime you'd like me to. Okay. I'm just at a loss of what we should be doing next.
Well, thank you very much for being an engaged, almost citizen, not quite
Yeah,
an
I'm just
incorporated
I'm only a
town,
half mile out.
but that is, you have put our eyes on this and it is being addressed with MDE and we appreciate that, but you keep being an advocate for that. And the one thing that I must say on the record, all the water that has been flowing out is treated water. None of it is sewer water.
I
So,
suspected that.
yeah.
The sludge should not be in there. That's just, it shouldn't be there.
but they did address the issue and MDE is coming out again for another inspection next week. So thank you for being engaged and I really appreciate
And I will
you
continue
speaking.
that, as I said. Thank you.
I appreciate that. All right, next up is Paul. Thank
Good
you very
evening.
much.
If it pleases the council, I will decline your offer to sing.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
You could state your name
All right.
and if you're in,
Yes. So good evening. My name is Paul Gutenberg. I live here in La Plata at 304 Prospect Street. First, I wanted to comment on the emergency ordinance 2503. This is an amendment to town code on the agenda tonight, which provides for a peak hour 35 trip threshold to trigger traffic impact studies when our planning process is evaluating a new development project. This emergency ordinance is concerning to me for two reasons. First, the emergency designation on any legislation has the immediate effect of eliminating the minimum 6-day period for public review and input on any new legislation. As this is a planning process, I cannot conceive of a process change that is needed on an emergency basis. In my opinion, using emergency procedures for non-urgent changes sets a bad precedent and is counterproductive to encouraging resident participation in local government, which is something that we do need to get better at. The second reason that this emergency ordinance concerns me is La Plata's planning process today uses the Charles County Adequate Public Facilities Manual, which has an identical 35-trip peak hour trigger for traffic impact studies. It's on page 5 of that manual. The second thing I just wanted to comment on tonight is the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, also being presented here on the agenda this evening. I've taken a pass through it, comparing it to the county manual La Plata's planning process uses today, and there are some glaring issues with the town's APFO as written. Staying with roads as one example, is the town's APFO has a significantly weaker volume to capacity ratio for traffic impacts to our local roads than the standard the county manual provides for us today. This is moving in the opposite direction that we should be going with the APFO that's specifically tailored for the town's needs. And there are several more examples that I could cite, but to be brief, I will end by just asking the following. Has the planning department and/or planning commission agreed with the readiness of the new APFO and the emergency ordinance as they will be presented here tonight? And I understand and agree with the rule against debate during public comments. However, I ask that the council president allow for addressing of my question and concerns during the deliberation of both the emergency ordinance and the APFOs that are going to be presented here on the agenda this evening. And that's all I really had. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
thank you. All right, and Patrick.
Before I start, amongst the champions, so I feel honored. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I did see somebody with swimmies on. I don't know if I should be worried that there's a flood coming, but I'm not a strong swimmer, so you're gonna need to save me. So first, my name is Patrick. I do live in La Plata and I am a resident here. I'm speaking tonight because I care deeply about the future of La Plata, our roads, our water supply, our neighborhoods, and the quality of life that brought so many of us here and keeps so many of us here. The APFO, or Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, that being presented today does not go far enough. It is a tool that's supposed to protect and ensure that the growth in La Plata does not outpace our infrastructure. Simply put, I don't think this document does enough. Now, I understand it is a first reading, but it's important to Paul's point that we set a strong precedent here. So first, on paper, this APFO does sound responsible, but when you start to go through it, you realize that there's nothing new proposed in the APFO that does not currently exist today and has not already plagued our community. One-way entrance streets, points in our neighborhoods, lack of speed bumps, and using Charles County standards for school seats. There's nothing really in here that protects La Plata itself. So I want to go through two sections specifically. First, section 4, which deals with water capacity. And I quote, access to reliable water supply is a fundamental requirement for any proposed development. Ensuring that the water demand does not exceed available resources is crucial for sustainable growth and responsible planning. What I ask is that we cannot roll out the APFO until the current water estimate formula that's used by the Planning Commission is made publicly available. It's incredibly concerning that this information is not available in the document. And in short, this is simply just wish casting and not holding a strong standard for our town. The issue with an APFO is the enforcement, and I have to question if we're going to be able to enforce this document to protect our folks. I think that it lacks a key metric and scorecard sheet. It's important that we have those two things in an APFO. Second, moving on to point 6, which is police protection within the town. Quote, this APFO will test and incorporate current practices to address the key elements of police protection to ensure that the police department can adequately service the needs for our town as we continue to grow. I got to be honest, we've been discussing about the police benefit pension program for the last 11 months because Public Works is associated with it. Nobody's willing to take on that, no agency is willing to take that on. I'm concerned the same thing's going to happen here with this APFO. We state that we want to give the police the ability to do their job. A pension program in LEOPS is clearly the standard industry. I don't understand why we don't split Public Works from the police department and give La Plata Police the ability to do their job. This helps with retention, helps with recruitment, lowers crime, ensures that La Plata continues to be a safe place for all of us to live. In short, I do think that Michael and Paul make some great points here today. We have some serious issues with sewage, with water, with the police department, with roads, with Public Works. I ask that we take a really strong look at the APFO and ensure that the standards are firmly enforced by the town council moving forward. Frankly, we need this. We deserve this. This is what we need from our town council. Thank you so much for a little bit of your time.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification, which I'm sure you two will stick around. This is a work session on APFO,
Yes.
the APF study. This document is not ready for prime time at all. And our council is going to roll up their sleeves tonight. It might be a very long evening. And I'm looking at all the swimmers going, we're bailing after we get our recognition, which is fine. But
Yeah.
this is a start, and that is what. So I appreciate your comments,
Thank
but
you.
it's a bit premature right now.
Sure.
All
Yeah.
right.
Want to
Moving.
make sure it's out there.
Do we have any other people out there that would like to speak that did not sign up? All right, let's get on to some fun things right here. Wow. As it was said, we're among some champions here. What a blessing it is for me to be able to be among these swimmers. I'll give you a little background of me too. I was a swimmer growing up, and I did everything except that breaststroke, man. I would get DQ'd coming out of the gate on that, but I did do the IM because my other strokes were strong enough to overcompensate for that breaststroke. So I appreciate all of your hard work and working together as a relay. That is always so much fun. That was probably one of my most fun things to do with the relay. So tonight, it's all about you. You are the champions. You have put yourself through some of the hard times to make sure you're staying up with training, getting in that water when it was so cold, and getting up early and staying late, but still keeping your grades up. Your grades are all up, right? Right? And putting your eyes on the prize. So tonight, we are going to recognize your hard efforts with some certificates, our town seals, and we're going to have Councilman Trollinger come down there. And if you all would indulge us at the end, if we could get a picture with these amazing swimmers, we would really like that.
I'm going to bring my laptop down front because there's so many to honor tonight. First, I'd like to have Coach Jeff, Jessica come out. Didn't see Mary Jane here. Okay, Cross is taking out our dual sport athletic lives, right? But I did want to take a moment before we start with the athletes to talk about Coach Jeff. In my limited time so far, being kind of, it's my third job being a swim coach with Southern Maryland Aquatics. I've been really impressed with the culture that you've built with these young athletes, despite having limited pool time and availability. We only have so many pools in the county, and swimming's a tough sport, right? We're swimming, we don't have music on in the water, right? We don't have a lot of interaction except for between sets, but it is so discipline focused. And you guys put in the work every single day with the help from the visionaries that are Jessica and Jeff, and you guys have really led a tremendous example for our community despite the tough situations that we have. And you're building a great program, and I wanted to thank you for that and honor you as well. So thank you, Jeff and Jessica, for everything that you've built and continue to build in our community. Thank you. And I will need your help because some of our swimmers are not here tonight, so I'm going to give them to you. First, start with Clint. Of course, how can we start anywhere else? We did want to recognize him for his achievements at MPSS and the Speedo Maryland Senior State Championships. There are so many honors that we could give him. First, start off 50 freestyle, 100 butterfly, 400 freestyle relay team he was a part of, 50 butterfly. I know I'm not going to hit every single thing to claim, but I'm going to give this to you to give. Okay. Next, I've got Jaden Wolseley. Is she here? Not. Well, why are you looking around like it's not you? All right. This is in recognition of your 50 freestyle. Thanks for being a great athlete in our town and keep up the great work. Got Landon. Is Landon here? Hey, congratulations. Thank you for coming. And I've got you as part of the boys 400 freestyle team. If I could have them all come up. We got Jackson as well. Alexander. Of course, we know Clint was part of that team. Landon, great work. Jackson, keep up the great work. Alexander, great job. Ezra, if you could come on up. This is in recognition of your second place in boys 11, 12, 50 breaststroke. I know you've been putting in the work every time at practice that I see you. Great job. Keep up the great work, okay? And again, after we get through, we're going to come up here and take a picture with council. Cambry Rose. Third place, girls 13, 1400 freestyle. Great job. Lamont Spriggs. All right, he's part of the 200 medley relay team for boys 15, 18 at Maryland Swimming State qualifying. So we've got Jackson, come on up again. We've got Joseph, who's might have hit your head on the door on the way in. Great job. Joseph, and I've got, I think yours is part of the other one. Okay, for the girls 13, 14, 200 medley relay team, can you come up? Audrey, Emma, Ambry, and Isla. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Noah. Is Noah here? Dakota and David and Cedric. Did not see him. All right, you guys, congratulations on your 200 medley relay qualifications and finish. So great job. Okay. That David's here. Hold on. Dakota. Oh, David, two. Right in the middle. Great job. Okay, our 9-10s that are ready to belt it out. On us. So Patrick, so Finley, so Mason. Great work. Oops. Here we go. Great. So bring this up. That's the town. We did want to thank you as well. So if we could have all of the athletes that were honored tonight come on up. If I could have town council and Madam Mayor come down. If they want a district.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
All right, it's all I got.
Yeah.
We're gonna take George and Levy are the great. Sit down, here we go. All right,
There we go.
are we good? We have everybody? Oh, you were gonna try to cheese out of that, one, weren't you?
Okay, yeah, that's good. Smile. Yeah.
Oh, see, yeah, that was good call, Michelle.
This is the official Facebook page, so, okay?
Thank you. We're gonna sit down. All right, you all are excused to go, or you can stay.
Sir.
Yeah, what's up? All right, how tall are you?
About 6'7".
And I got my kids at 6'5".
Not sure. So if you got.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I'm not in school. I went, yeah.
The only time I ever feel short, so there you go. And so what are your strokes?
Unfortunately, I was actually hurt during that meet, so I didn't perform as well. Otherwise, I would have made it to actually 5 or 53, but so I didn't make it for that breaststroke crash. I didn't swim that meet. But, yeah,
What year are you?
2026.
So you're a junior, right?
Yes.
You are not done growing. I've got boys, I know.
I hope I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, keep up the great work and
Yeah.
congratulations. Thank you all. All right. I feel like I'm at a loss here, but that's all right. Not facing the mirror here. All right, well, that cleared out real fast. All right, so that we can continue with our meeting. Do you want to sit? I feel like we're kind of far apart, but that's all right. Which, yeah. Oh, these go quickly too. Oh, we can do it this way. Yeah. All right.
Oh,
Let's give it, you want to give him a little more, let's give him a little more room. There, a little bit better. All right. Well, thank you everyone for indulging us here. Next, as we continue with the agenda, next on the agenda is the discussion of the fee schedule And I am hoping that you all read Ms. Larson's memo and have had an opportunity to peruse all of the fees. Ms. Larson is here. Should you have any questions on that?
I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for the work on that. So generally, as I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the enterprise fund fees are going to be held at around 3%, right?
Correct. We did a large increase last year.
Yeah, I know that, yeah, it was very evident when we got the calls and the emails, so I get it. So does the Baker Tilly study play into this in terms of fees or the water usage or?
Well, it was,
Actually, I remember now, the major facility fee,
so,
that's going to go up, right?
yes, and that one's going up considerably. because
Yeah.
I actually went and redid their worksheet, updated it with the current assets. And it calculated out, I believe it was 16%. Yeah, it's a 16% increase. Last year, we did a 7% increase. And then when I updated their worksheet, I came up with the 20,000, whatever it was, and that was a 16% compared to FY 25.
And so when you say assets, you mean water and sewer facilities, like the plant,
It's water and sewer. Yes.
water and sewer, so it's the plant, it's all the pipes, treatment, pump stations, all that stuff. So the assets of the value went up?
No, we have, so there's two assets that are now in operation. That's the Southwest Quadrant and the Mod 1
Okay,
upgrades.
Okay.
So that increased the replacement of those assets.
and then you refer to worksheet, I guess don't want to get in the weeds too much, but what
That
do
was
you mean
Baker
by
Tilly's
worksheet?
worksheet. When they
Ah,
originally
okay.
did the first study,
Okay,
they gave us the worksheet so that we could update it. So I used that worksheet.
and then related to the Southwest Quadrant, and maybe this is getting into the enterprise funds, but we're basing that on the USDA grant loan?
Well, so we are in the process of getting that loan. Right now, we've been funding it with major facility fees. When we get that loan, it will replenish the major facility fees, but then when we pay that loan, it's
Right.
going to come out of the major facility fees.
So are we in danger of losing that loan?
Not from my understanding. There's a few more pieces that have to be done for the third application to be approved. And once that's approved, I can do the last application for all the contingencies.
So the loan's never really been approved then, right? I mean, we have never
Well-
used any funds from that yet.
Well, we have.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get, I guess.
There's, so there's two applications.
Okay,
That have been approved.
okay.
We still have a third one and
Okay.
a fourth one.
So we've used the two applications.
Yeah, but we haven't received the funds. We won't receive the funds until the project's
Okay.
completely done and.
Oh, it's a reimbursement.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
But the loan amount is like, the interest is like 1 or 2% or
It's
some minimal.
1.9%.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
So again, I just would express my concern about, are we going to get that approved, given what's happening at the federal government?
Well, it's not a grant, it's a loan.
I
haven't heard-
understand,
yeah.
but.
I have not heard that there was anything that we were not going to get it.
No, and I've been in contact with them. We are not in jeopardy of losing that loan. We just have to close out Mod 1, which the obligation just closed out. As of today, they have the funding, the paperwork that has closed out. And now we're going on to obligation 2. So that is not, it is a loan that's not in jeopardy.
And then with respect to those, both Mod 1, which helps the treatment plant, and then the Southwest Quadrant, will there be additional funds needed in the future years?
Well, yeah, because we're going to have to continue upgrading. There's all 4 mods have to be upgraded.
And so is that in the CIP yet? Or will
Well,
it be?
It will be, Mod 2 is going to be in this capital budget, FY 26 capital
Okay.
budget. The others won't start until later down the line.
And then is it the appropriate time or not? Because I don't know whether there should be some forecasting what we're going to need in the out years.
Well, we do need to do forecasting. We
So
definitely,
so is that going to be done and by whom?
well, we have our asset manager that we hired, and part of that is to build out a long-term capital improvement
okay.
plan as well as a long-term operating plan.
Mhm. And so, the CIP is operating year and 5 years out. Is that kind of what it is?
Well, the capital improvement plan would be we have the FY 26 capital
Correct,
budget, which you
correct.
talk next meeting.
Correct.
And then we have the CIP. The CIP is not going to be ready by the time we do the capital budget because I'm going through worksheets right now and there's a lot of questions that I have. But the capital budget has been submitted to the town manager for review before going to the finance committee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the fee schedule?
So, Kareem, the 3%, is that remember?
Mike?
Plus 7% more, and then if I'm not mistaken, I'm so sorry. If I'm not mistaken, it was a graduated, wasn't it originally supposed to be 7, then 5, and then flatten out at like 3% in that Baker Tilly study? Is 3% keeping, what I'm getting at is are we keeping up with our true costs?
So actually the 3% does make sense. The only fund that I'm concerned about is sanitation.
Okay.
So we did add in here a second can fee in here to help mitigate that gap for sanitation. Part of that is the two positions have been added to sanitation. Benefits are very expensive because the town, again, covers 100%, and I'm budgeting because I have no idea who we're going to get, if they need a family plan or a single, I don't know. So I'm budgeting, assuming that it's going to be a family plan. The other 3 enterprise funds, we were actually, even with the 3%, we were going to be in a surplus, which is what I intend to use to help with the capital budget.
Okay. From a sanitation standpoint, have you looked at, and I was just kind of looking at, like, Anne Arundel County does a yearly. They just charge this is what you get per year. I think it's $445. I guess my concern is are we hauling away somebody else's trash? Because last time I talked to you, you were saying that the amount per ton is going up from the county, which they're gonna charge what they need to charge. But are we that messy in the town of Plated that we're gonna have to sit here and every time we turn around? Because here's what happens is I absolutely, we should cover our expenses. But if every year we're going to a town resident and going 3%, 5%, 7%, you can only squeeze something so much before it says enough. And that's what I want to make sure that if there isn't, is it easier to go to either whether it be, and not that going annually would be really a cost saving structure, but how are other municipalities doing it and seem to be doing it cheaper than we are?
I did talk to somebody that was interested in doing contracting for it. And initially, when I got that contract, it looked very appealing. However, when I read in detail, it didn't specify how many cans, since right now we do as much as they put out. And that was one of the things that Public Works and I talked about is why aren't we charging for what they're using kind of on the water and sewer? We charge what they use. So that was the approach that we were trying to make with the sanitation of, let's see if that can mitigate some of that cost that we keep on adding. It keeps going up and yet everybody has a flat fee pretty much.
Okay. And that's kind of where I'm getting it is, the dumpster in the courthouse parking lot, if you go there on a Sunday night, it's got everything under the sun, and we're paying, the town's hauling that away. That's on us. So if we need to put a lock on it, if we need to,
Well,
and that's just a
Yeah.
kind of a next.
there was another thing I threw out to Public Works that didn't get a lot of feedback, but stop doing commercial, just do residential. Because right now they have a choice. We give them a choice to let the town pick it up or they have a different company. Residential, it has to be the town.
Correct.
We could stop doing commercial.
Well, I think it's certainly, if it's cheaper for the
Mhm.
town, that would certainly
Yeah.
be something, and if it's cheaper for the commercial, and,
Yeah.
if they can contract it
Mhm.
out, that's certainly something to, I think, to look into. What I'm worried about is eventually you are gonna get to a point where I don't care how much you charge per can, where somebody says enough is enough.
Mm.
And I think we're very quickly approaching that if we can't figure out either one, how to reduce our cost going into the landfill, which we know how that's gonna work. And I know you and I talked about it, is whether we need to move to a per, because if you have a family that's 65 or 70 years old and two people, whereas, look, I'm probably the one that's probably benefiting because I have 5 kids and we go through a lot of trash. So I'm the one that's benefiting. So I'm shooting myself in the foot here. But if you have two senior citizens in the town of La Plata, hopefully it all works out in the long run and we all kind of chip into the same thing. But at some point, somebody's got to ante up if they're doing 3, 4, and 5 cans. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the 3% is where we need to be.
I didn't want to increase it so much because last year we increased it 20%.
Exactly.
And that was a huge increase to the residents.
And we heard about it.
If that wasn't the case, I probably would, so an 8% would break us even. So if we had done 8%, it would be break even for sanitation.
Mhm.
Where the other 3 funds, the 3% covered our expenses.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Any other questions? Right, so I'm looking for a consensus.
There is only one thing I want to
Oh.
mention. I want to make a change. And it's
Okay.
only moving a line item. I had added this line item, but after talking to planning, the engineering fee review that I added under traffic impact review,
Uh-huh.
I actually want to move it up under the planning division. So it's for any type of planning service that may need an engineering review fee.
Okay, so it's just it's,
I'm moving it
Yep.
just to, instead of being under traffic, it's under for all, would apply to all planning division fees.
okay. All right, so we're looking for a consensus to move this forward. Is that correct?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Councilman Winkler,
Yes.
Councilman Trolinger,
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins.
Yeah.
And I am as well with the just the placement of the one fee you just mentioned. All right, moving along, the next item on us discussing our general fund and our enterprise fund. So we have had 2 weeks to thoroughly digest a whole lot of information that was given to us, especially at the last meeting. And during this time, well, I asked Ms. Larson this morning, and she said that she did not receive any questions or points of clarification requests on that, on the general fund budget or the enterprise budget. So that means we probably don't have many questions with that. What I'm looking for before we open it up for questions, what we're going to decide on today is which general fund budget to move forward. We're looking for a consensus. And is it the budget with the pension concept, the budget with the 457 plan, or the budget that with the finance committee's recommendations, which include the 457, a project manager, and the removal of the land use study for the time being, to be placed in when it's closer to the comprehensive review time. And then this will bring us one step closer. The next step after this, when a budget has been agreed upon to move forward through a consensus, then they will get prepared for a public hearing, which we will bring, and we'll have to advertise, and that will be 15 days after we've advertised it. So with that, are there any questions on the general fund?
So both, I'm still a little, well, both options with the 457 and with the pension, does that include the 90,000 fiscal analysis or not?
The one that does is the pension one and the 457 one, not the finance committee recommendation one.
Okay, now, okay, I'm still don't understand. There are two budgets.
3 budgets,
Okay,
The
well,
first
which ones have the?
1 and
not-
2.
And which ones are those? Because I'm confused still.
No,
I don't
there's-
understand.
There's the one with the pension. This budget was prepared based on what was approved last year.
Correct.
The department.
And that does not have the 90K in it.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 457 was one that was requested for me to prepare, which has all of the requests from the departments. And then there's the last budget, which has all the finance committee recommendations.
With the 90K out of it.
Correct.
And so they made no, and I think they clarified this, but I wanted, so there was no other line item budgets that there are no other line items that they looked at in all those budgets that they recommended for or against. No other thing other than
Well,
that.
they looked at a lot of,
Well, I understand.
looked at-
I'm just trying to
they,
get,
they only had the 3 recommendations. There was no other recommendations made.
That they brought forward to
Yeah.
us. They went and spent
Yeah.
hours going through the
They-
budget.
Yeah, they received the worksheets from the departments with all the department's details on why they're asking for what, how much in each line item.
And so that's what they reviewed. Any other questions?
So, because I'm now my wheels are spinning. And so essentially the difference between the 457 plan budget that you were asked to put together and the finance committee's recommendation is the 90,000
And the project manager.
and the project manager. So
Correct.
essentially,
Correct.
essentially you're
Very-
trading off the project
Mhm.
manager for and that's, I think, that in essence, what if you're either siding with wanting to go with the 457 route and trading off the finance, a project manager for the study
Correct.
or the pension.
Yeah.
And I know what I want to do. I know what I'm leaning towards from a fiscal responsibility. I mean, you and I have talked it ad nauseum. The process is what is leaving a bad taste in my mouth. Because as I said the last time, I'm not sure what's the purpose of passing legislation that I did not agree with? What's the purpose if you're just going to end around it to sidestep it? And I think that's a legitimate concern, because if you're not going to have legitimate rules of order, then what are we doing here? And you know, I'm inclined to think, especially since Mr. Norris might be in the back here. My understanding is that, you know, the 457 or the pension plan is not necessarily what the police officers want now. I think that the 457 is the best opportunity for all employees looking at now and in the future, long-term fiscal responsibility for the town that we are getting ready to we haven't even scratched the surface of what's getting ready to happen.
I'm very concerned because we're so close to DC, but also the same things that I have brought up earlier. Investment income is going to significantly decrease. We relied on 660,000 of ARPA funds for operating costs, which are now gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I am concerned about maintaining a revenue stream to support the current operations we have.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, if you're,
And one other thing I wanted to point out, and I'm sorry.
yeah, no.
There has not been a merit since you guys did the salary and compensation study. No employee has gotten merit. They've only gotten a COLA.
And these budgets that are in front of us right now doesn't mean we have to pass any of those. If we look at one and say, okay, we're going to eliminate this and put in a merit raise, we can do that. This is a budget that we are agreeing on to bring to public hearing. And when it goes to a public hearing, we hopefully have our residents that are saying, no, we don't want that in, or we want that in. This is where they have the opportunity to shine as well. So these are what department heads have asked for. And you're right about the 500,000 for the pension, but you have to add in the caveat that when that was done, we did not have a finance committee.
Mhm.
Finance committee is now looking at it through the eyes of
Mhm.
residents, through their expertise, and they're only making recommendations. They're just saying, this is not fiscally sound for 10, 15 years down the road. So had that, I understand what you're saying. Had we had the finance committee done the pension plan and now tried to do it differently, I think that would be a better conversation to have than just
Mhm.
saying, now this council put together a finance committee with 5 really smart people. And they're looking at this through dollars and cents, not persons, not
Mhm.
personalities, not feelings, not emotions. Does it make sense? So that's where that came from. But,
No, and I think that the finance could, look, they are all extremely well suited for that position. And I appreciate the integrity and the work that they've put into trying to put things, and this is just my humble opinion, to put things back in an entirely different direction than maybe in years past. You know, I'm the shortest tenured individual on this council, so I only have one other budget to go. But I will say that I appreciate they're looking at it from a long-term perspective. So I mean, if you're looking for my, you know, my blessing on it, I'm inclined to take the finance committee recommendations. There's no point in having them if we're not gonna listen to them and not use their knowledge and their foresight. Um, but I'm happy to hear that this is not a written in stone, that we are going to revisit any resident input to you know, I think the future is it's gonna be very bleak in the next 18 months.
and remember, when this was discussed
Mhm.
before, we did not have what's going on with the federal government. And we have to be aware, be cognizant of many of our residents, our federal employees.
22% of Charles County's revenue stream is reliant
Yep.
on.
So we
federal
have to, and it rolls downhill. So thank you. Councilman Trollinger?
Yes, I have a couple questions, and I appreciate you kind of expanding the scope of what we're doing here with the budget. We can choose to go with one plan, we can choose to take what we want, leave what we want. I think it's important to recognize our responsibility and our call as council and not abdicate to the finance committee. They have a role, they have a responsibility to us and to the town and their volunteerism, but ultimately the buck stops with us, so to speak. I did want to ask you, Ms. Larson, about some of the finance committee's recommendations. I think specifically the project manager
Mhm.
recommendation. You know, we're passing a budget. I wasn't sure what that cost might be, or if we have an estimate on what a project manager. I know they were talking about it coming from a grant,
Yeah,
potentially.
potentially. I did move the 90,000. I pretty much replaced it because there's other projects. I mean, the Dorchester Community Center, not all that's grant. We have the police station. There's so many projects that have been sitting stagnant. And that's that was the recommendation, was to get some of these projects going, that we do have grant funds, but that we are still trying to work on getting, because we haven't done anything for 4 years. So that was the idea of the project manager, was to take control and get these projects started.
So I think council almost unanimously recognized the need for that.
Mhm.
And I know they said that funding could come from grants.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Dorchester Community Center.
Right.
Most of that's going to be covered by grants, providing we get everything.
Mhm.
But we still have a portion that we have to pay on our own.
Right. So what would we estimate, I guess, as far as what a project manager could
Mhm.
cost, or do we have an idea of that?
I don't have an idea. We're looking at probably having a contractor, not necessarily an employee to do it.
So as far as the budget concerns, what guidance do you have for us if we all agree, hey, this is a great idea?
Mhm.
We'd be foolish not to take that recommendation to
Mhm.
utilize what we've already worked hard to get. We just have to capitalize on it.
Mhm.
How do we look at that from a financial perspective, not knowing, the actual costs? Do we approve a concept? Do we approve range?
Well, you're approving a budget, a plan,
Mhm.
saying that we're earmarking, I'm going to use the 90,000 to do this. Hopefully, we get something, a RFP go out, get some proposals, and then we have this amount earmarked for that. If it's over, then we would, depending on if total contracted services under that is over the budget, we come back and ask for a budget amendment. If it's under, then we don't have to worry. Again, these are plans. We assume that it's kind of like, we don't always know what's going to happen. We have a plan. We want to get a project manager. We're earmarking 90,000 if it doesn't cover all from grants, because we do have the grants in the capital budget, which we could use that first and then may not have to use that. And if we don't use that and our revenues actually end up over our expenses, then it goes in fund balance. If it's under, then we have to use fund balance. But again, it's a plan.
Mhm.
And that's what we've earmarked for the plan to do that.
Okay, thank you. Is that, I can't help but see 90,000 is the same for the land survey, right? So are we kind
It
of,
was a simple, yes. It was kind of like,
well,
well,
we
it's,
don't do
the
this.
number's already there.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know really what it's gonna cost. And we have a lot of unstarted projects that, I mean, the police want their building, Public Works needs their building renovated. We have the Dorchester Community Center. We have all the street studies that's there. So there's a lot of things that haven't. And also, you gotta consider some of these capital projects that we put in the ARPA funds, we haven't even used, like the amphitheater. It's been out there. It's in the capital budget for FY '26.
And to be fair to town staff, it's a little bit difficult to capitalize and we don't have our planner or
Yeah.
our town manager,
Mhm.
and
But
everybody's wearing multiple hats, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the guidelines and the deadlines that we have to focus on
Yeah.
it. So that might be an easy supplemental help. So I like that recommendation. I appreciate, Madam Mayor's, sending the email say, I know that was annoying to have to send all of those things out. It looked like, the finance committee got the Bolton study after the recommendations were given to us, which is fine. Okay,
you got to consider they were looking at,
a lot.
yeah, they were looking at a lot, and they were also considering, they weren't looking at what it actually detailed, but the concept and the cost of the concept.
Understood. The graphic they used is from a think tank that specifically looks at limiting pensions nationwide, right? And so that helps me a little bit in focusing, and their source material was vast and broad, okay? But when we don't start with the concept of what council was hoping to achieve with the Bolton study and the plan, we also, we missed the point in just blanket pension versus 457, because there are other examples of pensions that are out there that are working, and they're, I don't know, labor the point, PLEOPS or other municipalities that are doing these types of things, but they're operating under the assumption already that these are of equal weight, and that's what they're being asked to do. It muddies the water as to their findings. And I say that because, the court, judge or jury is supposed to weigh the evidence that they're given and come to a finding based on that. And without us giving them all of the evidence, so to speak, it does slant things when we receive it back in that way. And that's why it was kind of, you know, it doesn't get us to where we need to go as far as utilizing their talents and their effort when we don't give them everything they need. They don't know that they need it because we haven't given it to them. They certainly followed up on many questions, and this budget process is hard enough already, much less trying to juggle, you know, pension versus 457, right? So while I think there's no question as to their qualifications, but they can only give us the result based on the information they were given. And so my biggest concern, and I don't have questions, but Councilman Winkler opined, Madam Mayor opined, so I'm gonna opine. You know, I want to do the right thing by the town, by the staff, by the employees, all employees, and future council. I did have one question that was kind of unanswered. I think I might have presented it confusingly in an email, but we were given some numbers in looking at, it might have been in a closed session, as to whether no enhanced pension, I should say, was used and no 457 plan was used, and it remained the same.
Mhm.
And not to say that the effort or the goals would be punted, but look, a 457 plan is in just as much risky situation right now as anything else with the current market. I mean, we can go to our parents and grandparents asking how their 401k is doing and see the results of that. That's not a question. The question is, what is the fiscally responsible thing to do, especially with the fact that we've got new town employees that are going to be coming in. They're going to have a big role in this process, hopefully, potentially. And it's not just us. And so this isn't a formal motion, but my leaning would be we stay as is with the idea that new council attacks, and I would say that one of the comments previously made about why, hey, have we talked to the department heads about these plans? Can we get together with the department heads with these plans and have a work session like we used to do on the budget, and not it being filtered? And I understand for efficiency purposes, that's one thing, but to hear from them directly in a group setting is helpful. We're sitting here together face to face. I don't know why that shouldn't be an issue to hear directly from Public Works and the town police rather than filtered through all these other channels and say, okay, what do your men and women want? Right?
Yeah, we actually met with the department heads, and they were also invited to the finance committee, and the police talked with the finance committee, Public Works talked with the finance committee.
Okay, but we're the ones called to do this, right? And we had access previously in the group session. And there are questions that Councilman Jenkins may have that rather than ask the finance committee how the police department felt about this issue or the Public Works.
I mean, this session was open to them. So, I mean, you have a police officer here.
Okay, that's
Unfortunately, we don't have Public Works here.
sure. And that wouldn't be fair, right?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
wouldn't be.
Right,
But it is open to them, and they are aware of that this was going on.
understood.
But we don't, we wouldn't have them speaking right now.
Right,
So that's not,
I mean, and they wouldn't be prepared to just
No.
because they're showing up to a
Just-
meeting of what's going on.
right. And you're asking a question and they, right.
Would, right.
It's right.
And so, of course, things change over time. And I think you and Ms. Kennedy warned the council that, hey, what the enhanced pension may how it may be implemented may be different than how you envision it, right? That maybe your class size is a lot different, or the class implementation is going to be different. And look, I think the finance committee made good points. I just wish they would have had more information. But what they've given to us makes me pause, right? And rather than, saddle new council with plans that I don't know that either of our largest groups even want or desire, bring them back to the table with a town manager and a town, I don't know that town planner would even be available yet or not, but bring everybody together and have the formal work session. That's my thought. But I'm just one guy, so.
All right, Councilman Jenkins?
I probably have used this 90K study I probably overused it, but for me, it's also a proxy of a larger issue. And again, as stated before, I certainly appreciate the Finance Committee's efforts, because I'm not an accountant, as you aptly said, and frankly, with all due respect, I don't want to be one. So, but that also requires the staff to educate us, and so the 90K is troubling to me only because it was in the budget, then it was shifted to another place, and then it was taken out of the budget, and then now the Finance Committee, makes a recommendation to remove it. I'm just mystified by that, very frankly, but yet we refer back to other projects or other issues where we've never had, in my belief, we've never had full transparency. We keep talking about Dorchester. Again, do we know what they've spent of our money?
Nothing that I know of has been spent. We haven't
yet-
got the grant. Well, yeah, we're in the process of getting them.
But the point is, we keep, for some reason, saying, well, and I'm not suggesting that's not a worthy cause, but it troubles me that we have no input. They don't talk to us. We don't talk to them. There's no transparency of what they've done, what they're going to do. We hear it piecemeal. We hear it whatever. But yet us and the Finance Committee goes through all these hours and hours, and I watched some of their meetings, and they did. So they only come up with 3 recommendations out of all that. I'm just perplexed by it. And yet, and another related issue, and I'm going to nitpick, but that's what I'm saying. So we have whatever amount of money we use for a public information officer. Okay, Foundry, right? Is that who they are? So again, I don't know what they've done. I have never seen a product they've done for us.
Yeah, you just don't know that.
But
They did a video.
okay, and that's a great valid point, and I'm educated and I appreciated that. But what does the public see, and are we getting a return on our investment? It's just an example.
Well,
I'm trying
they're
to.
contracted
wait.
out, so we get a deliverable every time we pay.
What is the deliverable?
There's a beautiful video that went out. It went
Video of.
Project Lifesaver. It hit all through social media.
Okay.
It was on our website.
Wastewater treatment plant.
Yep, wastewater treatment plant. They've done things for the holidays. They've done things to promote us. They do a lot of videos on that, but they are a deliverable. They're contracted out. You pay them money, you get something in return. They're not on retainer.
Well, I would be very curious, because I've never seen any of them.
But
I-
you're not
I-
on social media a lot, so I'm
I-
surprised.
I'm only telling you what I know.
Well,
Okay.
It's not in your algorithm then.
Well, if it is or it isn't, all I'm suggesting, then what does the public see? I don't know. I'm just trying to make an example, an example of. I just feel disconnected with the whole process again, because we haven't, and I would echo Councilman Troller's point of view. We never had any discussion with the department heads. I mean, And for some reason, and I'm sure we have a reason why, we didn't have a retreat in January. Because for me, when I worked here and then as a council member, the amount of information as a council person, when they sat here and we could look them in the eye and we could talk to them and they would tell us, here's what we're doing now. Here are our issues. Here's where we need help. And we could hear and see that. We haven't had it this time again. And so that really troubles me that we don't get that direct input because they're the folks on the ground doing the hard work. And so now we have three different operating budgets. And frankly, from my perspective, they're not particularly good choices because you have to pick and choose this over that, so you have to kind of mix and match. So I'm not sure I'm ready to go forward yet. And I know you're shaking your head and that's fine, but I'm trying to give you my opinion.
That's fine.
Doing this for 4 years now and this is not going to change tonight, or it's not going to change what budget we do. We don't have any metrics again, as a finance committee aptly recognized.
And that is something I want to do. The problem is the way we did budgets before, it was put a number in.
I understand all that.
And
Well,
we-
give her an opportunity
we
to
asked
explain for the
for a lot
public.
of information.
All I'm suggesting is that, we had a street, it's not going to change tonight. All I'm suggesting is that coulda, woulda, shoulda, we ought to be able to do that like
Yes,
next
but
year.
We should have been able to do that 5
Correct.
years
That
ago.
is-
The fact that we don't have that basis.
That is
I'm
absolutely correct.
Starting basically at zero and trying to say, okay, tell me what do you
Mhm.
need? Show me
Right.
okay, you want contract service? What's in that number? And that was a lot for these departments to do. It was very difficult for them to evaluate the data and give me that.
So do they have any, so they get any kind of training about this
Well,
generalized
We
training?
did budget training. We did,
Who did budget training?
the GFOA. It was offered to all the departments.
Okay.
We came in here and we had 3 days, 3 hours, 1 week and 3 days and 3 hours another week for the departments to go through that. And we also had the spreadsheets that I sat down with the departments and gone over, hey, here's where you put in the contracted service, the amount, this feeds into this sheet, so that all this information came from the departments based on their needs. I didn't cut anything out. The town manager talked with the departments, made some adjustments, but what they gave me is what I'm giving you.
Okay, fair enough.
And for me, the biggest, as Councilman Jenkins, there are 3 budgets here, but those are not in stone. If you like budget number 2, but you are recommending something else to be put in there or taken out or whatever, these are living documents right here. We have not said that it has to be 1, 2, or 3. These are the
can mix and
menu
match.
items, but I don't want broccoli with
Mhm.
my rice. So I'm taking the broccoli off and I
So-
want an extra salad or whatever. So that's what this is. But
That's
with
good to know.
here-
It's good to know.
Here's I hear what council is saying. I've heard what council is saying for the last 4 years. We want to take care of our employees. We want to make sure that our residents are taken care of. And we are tasked with making sure that we have a balanced budget. Money coming in is money going out, right? So and I'm just going to rehash for people that may be tuning in that that weren't paying attention last year, when we had the majority of council say, hey, we want this concept of a pension. The 2 of us that did not vote for that, didn't disagree with the pension, just that one, because it is intertwined with Public Works and the police department, where it's not done anywhere else. So we can do budget number 1. That doesn't mean that pension is going to be all of a sudden materialize. It's kind of like it'll be sitting there. So if $500,000 will go towards a pension, if they can find one intertwined. The second one is the 457, still has in that land study in there, but it doesn't have a project manager. Again, that that one would be implemented 457 immediately. But that takes care of all employees with 2% automatically given to those boots on the ground. And the thing is, with that one, remember, our employees have not had a merit raise. So this is a way of giving back on that. We can explore options. We do have to come to a consensus tonight because we are against time. We've got to pass a budget. Just like they did sine die yesterday up in Annapolis, we have to decide what is going to go forward for a public hearing. That's not saying that we're adopting this. This is what we are bringing forward to the public so that they can have their bite at the apple. But we have to take everything into consideration when moving this general fund and then eventually the enterprise fund forward for a public hearing for our residents to weigh in.
So,
As for a point of clarification, you have mentioned merit raise, okay? We haven't heard about a request during this budget process to include that as part of the budget. But you're saying that a 457 plan is like a merit raise in a way?
No,
Is
it
what-
gives
is
them,
it a
it gives them
substitution of
something,
that?
no. It
Okay.
gives them something to show that we are giving them an access to retirement. It's an enhanced pension, but it's giving them something.
Okay.
They have amazing healthcare,
Mhm.
of course, and they have a pension through Maryland State, the Maryland State. But we could not give them a 457 and we could do a merit. But it has to be fair and across the board. And right now, it's not.
We have no, I don't have any numbers as to what what amount the merit raise would be, who
So
qualifies any of that if we're under a budget time crunch.
the merit didn't come in because we were at a balanced budget. So for every 1%, it's like 64,000. That's enterprise and general fund. So for every 1% increase in salary is about 64,000. That's general fund and enterprise fund.
Okay.
And I mean, even last year, we didn't do a merit, but the COLA was decreased. It should have been like a 3.7 and it was decreased to a 3%. So even last year, there was no merit talk because even the COLA was reduced.
but is merit based upon performance?
We would have performance evaluations. That's how we've done it previously.
Post merit increase we would have, or
So previously, back in 2015, that's when they started doing reviews. And that review would then equate to a merit. And I believe, I want to say 2020, there was no increase in a merit because it didn't fit in the budget. And then they did an increase. And then there was that compensation study that was just taken and just given to employees. And since then, there has not been anything done.
okay.
And then, so your point's well made. It's a plan. It is still then possible that a budget can be amended during the fiscal year.
Well, you guys can always make a budget amendment.
So the new council could
I
do
mean,
that.
yes. I mean, it was like that.
And what's the process to do that?
Well, it gets an ordinance. We do.
No, but what I'm saying, who can generate that request or that ordinance or whatever?
Sure. Can request.
So an individual councilman can't request that or a department head
I don't,
through the town manager.
I just know.
I'm trying to, so the public can understand the process.
I just know a budget amendment has to be passed by an ordinance. So like at the end of the year, I've reconciled like the furrow machine. We didn't have it in the budget.
I'm
going
just trying to
have
get
do
to
a
the
budget
point
amendment.
where
So
so the budget can be amended requiring an ordinance.
It has been amended many times during our tenure.
Okay.
I'm just kind of struggling with the concept that our town employees would think that a 457 plan, my understanding is many of them don't want, would equate that to the same as a merit raise. and I don't think it's probably accurate. But giving them something that saddles the town, which is the whole question, right? Does an enhanced pension plan that was picked saddle the town with too much fiscal, you know, weight later on down the road? Well, I mean, with the 457 plan, I mean, we're doing a similar thing,
Actually,
which wasn't,
the 457, you're making the contribution up front. In the pension, you're having an obligation in future years. So the 457, we would know each budget year exactly what it is and could easily be forecasted. A pension, we can't. It's on the employee to make sure they manage it, work with the financial advisor so that whatever their plans for retirement can be fulfilled between their options, the 457, the Maryland State Retirement, the HSA, depending on what they're doing, what they want.
Mm.
But for the town, the 457 is much more fiscally responsible because we can forecast easily out many, many years.
and look, we had that information,
Mm.
voted as such, and it was not, we didn't go in that direction. So I appreciate that.
All right, so we're looking for a consensus to move something forward, so we have a public hearing.
Well,
Um,
I'd like to,
You threw out an idea of, and obviously we have
sure,
people, but, so why wouldn't we then just remove all things, go back to a blank slate? This is not gonna get passed until after May 6th.
Mhm.
I mean, let's be, you know, let's throw it all out right on, throw our cards all out on the table here. It's gonna be on May 6th, so we could pass anything we want, and May 7th, the new council could come in and go, yeah, we don't want that, let's tear that up and start the whole process, so.
Yeah.
So then, to Councilman Trollinger's point, I don't like it, but I think if it's a blank slate, is that the easiest thing to do to get consensus so that we can meet the budgetary deadline that we have to in order to publish it, in order to get them a public hearing? I mean, there's a process to everything. I don't like it any more than you do that we're in the 11th hour and we're still trying to figure out, wow, we didn't take into account any merit raises. We're trying to throw in a 457 as a merit. That's water under the bridge, and that's, there's a lot of things coulda, woulda, shoulda. But, what's the movement forward? What's the thing that's gonna move this process forward? So that we can move on to the next item on the agenda, and actually that doesn't hamstring or put somebody, whether it's myself or any, an entirely new council, an entirely new mayor with a new town manager, and then they come in on May 7th, they go, boy, did they leave us a pile of, what, to deal with. I mean,
That's true. I mean, you have to. It is going to be dependent on public hearing. What the residents want. We're giving them, here is an option. You like it? What input do you have? Ultimately, it's their budget. We work for them. We have 11,000 bosses. We're doing the best that we can to bring something forward to them. And if they say, no, I want this instead of that, it is our obligation to listen to them and make the best decision for the entire town. And that's where we're going with that. But we have to move something forward.
Ms. Larson, if the current retirement benefits stayed in place, where would we be in, as far as the budget goes, as far as what is
Well, if we remove the 457 in the pension, we would have a surplus. I
right?
can tell you that. I don't know exact amount, but we
I
would have.
have a
I think
range in my mind of what,
it's like 100. So if we remove
was-
it,
I think it was
190.
250,
I have it in-
260.
Oh, here we go. Without an additional benefit, the surplus would be 288,000.
And so if I may, make a motion as to a particular budget and we can have discussion, but
Not a motion, just a recommendation, because it's not a formal. Yeah,
okay, well, the concept that may be helpful for our town staff, our town, or our future council have the most tools to be able to use, I would recommend adopting the financial committee's recommendation for the project manager. The finance committee's recommendation for the project manager, keeping the land survey, knowing that if it's not utilized, it can go to other projects. And unfortunately, if that happens, you know, whatever, but at least we can tab it for that because we have a surplus available to cover that.
Yes. Good.
And the third part, the most important part, is to leave the retirement benefits as is, knowing that there was a mandate to address the police retirement benefits, as has been for many years, trying to get worked out, to allow for council and department heads and Madam Mayor and future town manager to address that as they see fit in the next council. I don't like it, but I think it's probably the most responsible thing to do for the town.
So essentially, that is the first pension, but you added in the project manager.
No,
No.
no. We leave the retirement benefits as they currently are without a new enhanced pension plan or 457. We allow for the
Project manager
recommendation.
and 90,000.
Yes.
So here's something to think about too, as we're just, talking about this. That $500,000 that is earmarked for the enhanced pension has to be pulled from fund balance.
If
And
there-
it's coming over from fund
Yeah,
balance.
but not on this one. So that's if this one, but
Yeah,
if we,
that's the-
if we scratched.
But wait a
all
minute, I'm just going back to the first one. So that can be implemented anytime, because we're pulling it in order to make it balance. When you put it in, you got to get it from somewhere. It's not from our revenues. It is from the fund balance to pay for that.
Yes.
So that is, to me, that's a positive net, that when we go and are ready to put that in, we're pulling it from fund balance anyway. So that would be a budget amendment down the road.
Well, yeah, you can do a budget amendment for anything that comes up.
Right,
Really.
but that's where that funding's coming from, where
Yes.
the 457 and everything else is coming from revenue that we have. But I do agree with, it's a hard pill to swallow on that, but it's something to move forward.
Also consider in this budget, we have, I think, over 600,000 I put for investment revenues that we're not going to see probably next budget. So taking it out and having that surplus wouldn't be a bad thing because revenues are probably not going to be as high, or they might be stagnant with property tax maybe going up and investment earnings going down.
So yeah, two clarification questions. Thank you. So the 457 is voluntary
Right now,
right now.
right now, there is no matching. So about
Mhm.
50% employees
Okay,
contribute to it right now.
today.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other issue that I remember during the discussion several months ago, and I'm not going to claim I know who said it, but I thought that any pension plan would take 12 to 14 months to implement.
I'm not,
that-
that would be something with HR trying to find,
I thought that's what
It could've
staff,
been
I
one
don't
of
know,
the-
I don't know whether it was you or Ms.
it could have
Kennedy.
been one of the
Okay.
presentations.
It could have been, yeah.
I
You pro-
I
so
don't know. I'm not familiar with pensions, so
Fair enough.
I forecast
I'm-
numbers. I don't.
So
Really
that does suggest that even though it's bitter and melancholy, that particular option is attractable that Councilman has proposed. For me, it is anyway.
Councilman Michael, can you put your mic?
Well, I mean, we keep batting the same beach ball back and forth and I like, I mean, like Councilman Trollinger just saying, look, let's clear the slate here. I agree with Councilman Jenkins that, the land use study should be in there. Again, it's one of those things that if you don't spend it, you still can appropriate it some way, somehow, but it keeps getting in the budget and somehow gets, it's somewhere. I don't know where it goes, but it's somewhere. And I do think the project manager, because I think that to me is the most glaring thing that the finance committee came up with, is that you guys got so many irons in the fire that unless somebody's taken a lead or a leadership position or a point position on these to implement and to follow up and hold people accountable and say, did you get this done? Did you do this? Because otherwise we have, and I echo your sentiments too. You've got the Dorchester Community Center and we know nothing about anything. The only thing I know about it is that Parks and Rec said they did not want to move it forward because there was never any discussion as to how to pay for the service. Getting it up was one thing, but who was going to run it and how are they going to pay for the day-to-day cost of running it? All those things need to be accounted for, and I'm not saying whether that's a reason not to. I'm just saying that's a budget item. That's a line item that, hey, we need to start. And without a project manager to say, hey, take a look at this, you're going to spend $1 million here and 500,000 here, but don't forget about the carrying cost or the operating cost moving forward that you just added to the budget.
So in our budget sheets for our capital, it does say who's requesting it, what department, who's the project manager. And then it talks about the capital, where's the funding coming from? Is there operating costs? All that's in there.
Correct.
And I mean,
But there are so
I would
many
love-
things that we have that are still just
Yes.
simmering. That's where I back to the whole point of this whole comment was that the project manager is such a needed, we need a lot of things and that is definitely one of them.
But with all that information being asked on these sheets, not all of it's being filled out because they just don't know.
Right. Right. So I think, if I'm hearing Councilman Trollinger correctly, I have no problem with moving forward with a budget that keeps the pension as is, adds in the project manager recommendation from the finance committee, keeps the land use survey. That probably will be.
Doesn't have to be,
No, but we laugh because you have to. I think that, it gives it the town residents, it gives the department heads, it gives all parties involved a chance to voice their concerns, whether it's to the existing council or to the new council. And so be it. They come back and they say, no, go back to the pension. Then just as you said, you can do a budget amendment and get it in. And it doesn't mean that all things are lost. It's not a do or a either or scenario. I think that I fall back on everything being from a fiscally responsible. I generally do think that like you said, with a 457, you can proactively plan and forecast that on a fairly accurate. The defined benefit is there's just too many unknowns at this point. I mean, look, I'm waxing on and on and on, but there's a reason why so many private industry say, look, we got to move, because we knowingly we cannot afford to maintain this level of, and it's sad, but I would much rather have a difficult conversation now and have some awkward, handshakes and eye rolls now than 20 years from now when somebody says, boy, are we on the hook? Because once you're on the hook, you're on the hook.
Seeing this as a work session as well, one thing that I want to throw out to this council too, that I think will help the future council, is if there is a formal motion, not tonight, maybe next, our next meeting, to officially unwind Public Works and the police in their pension so that each of them can have a pension for boots on the ground. I think that is what that has stalled us for a year. Trying to put this square box into a round peg, and we've gone nowhere, and we've wasted a year. So food for thought, something to think about for our next meeting is to make it official, to unwind those two. But I would also want something in there to say, moving forward, we would like to see this or that. So
I don't know that that would be necessary because there's no legislation formally binding them. That's just how we approached it, because the concern from Madam Mayor and I think Councilwoman Bryant Ward was that we allowed for additional benefits for Public Works, not just the police department. And so how council wants to deal with that moving forward, I think will be their prerogative, but there's no official legislation saying that they have to be tied together. So I don't know that we would have official legislation saying that they have to be unwound. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, maybe it's the will of the council because it was a directive that was given
Sure.
to the HR to find this and make it happen. So maybe not legislation, meaning a resolution or ordinance, but a
Yeah, 'cause that's why I
direction.
said a couple of meetings ago when we said it didn't need to, because that's what I was afraid of, is that we were gonna unwind something, but if you don't do it either via an ordinance, resolution, recommendation, however you want to phrase it, that was my fear, was that we put something in motion, we rang the bell, we got to unring it.
It is the council gave the town manager
Those are instructions.
direction to work with HR and eventually with finance to create this. So
Look, she's leaving now. She's throwing the bus and she's.
she's drinking now. But that may be something that we give marching orders to explore because the only order that was given to HR was to make this work. And that was from our council is to do that. So
Finance Committee explore 457 plan. So, we know that marching orders can be changed and abided by or not, but.
remember, theirs is just recommendations.
Correct.
Those are recommendations on numbers, not people. We're doing people because we know the work that they do. We're not doing the numbers so much. We're doing with the heart, they're doing with the pen, and we've got to make those two work to balance a budget. So with that said, some food for thought for next week or next meeting is to give the town manager marching orders to have the HR continue exploring. I don't think this should stop, but I think what she's exploring now is a concept that does not happen. So I've heard all three is moving this forward for a consensus to keep in the public, I'm keeping the project manager, keep the 90,000 land study in, and then let our residents speak as to an enhanced pension
No.
at the public hearing.
No, that's not what the recommendation was.
Keep in project manager.
Keep the pension as
Yeah.
today.
No additional benefits. Remove all additional benefits. No
Leave it
457,
as
no
it
pension.
currently exists.
No, nothing.
That's what I said.
No.
And allow and bring it to public hearing with just the the project manager and the 90,000.
And the current pension system as it exists
Yeah.
today.
Basically, no additional benefits.
Yes, there's no enhanced pension. There's not a 500,000. There's not a 457.
No.
There's nothing. So
Correct.
then it goes to public hearing. We listen to what the public wants when making a decision as to what budget to pass.
Right.
Yeah, and it's exactly what I said, exactly
And
what you
if we had
said.
a court reporter here, they would have read it back, and that was not what she said, but that is correct.
We're
That
only doing one budget.
last
One
year's.
budget, project
No benefits.
manager,
Next year.
90,000.
Budget.
That's what's going
That's
forward.
Right.
That's it. That's what I said. All right.
Mhm.
And
That's
I
what you're
will
saying.
look there.
Sounds good.
All right. So that is that. Enterprise fund. Any questions on the finance department had, the finance committee did not have recommendations to do anything with the enterprise fund.
Correct, and I'm going to prepare the enterprise fund the same way I'm preparing this one to take out the benefits.
Right, so
And-
do we have a
Yeah, that-
consensus to
That
move,
negates my question. Thank you.
do we have a consensus to move forward with the way that Ms. Larson just
So,
indicated?
so does that have any impact on the fee schedule at all?
Well, it's gonna increase revenue, but I would not change the fees.
Okay, that's, thanks for that clarification. Thank you.
Yep, I think that's a smart move.
Yeah.
All right, good
Can
on
I bring
that?
up one thing? So I
Go
got
ahead.
I got some updated numbers from the Maryland State Retirement. I significantly underestimated what the increase is gonna be. I did a 50 or 0.5% increase. It's actually 1.31%. I would like to make that adjustment, remove the 0.45% for the Time for Care Act, because that will not go into effect. That way, that's what's not going to happen's gone. And the amount that it's actually increasing, because I got these numbers Monday, is truly affected. It's not going to be a huge increase.
But by taking out
It,
the
it
care-
makes it more accurate, and there's not going to be any material change. Let's put it that way. But
That
it
would
makes it more
require a
accurate.
budget amendment for you to go back and correct or pull. from
It just
fund
makes
balance.
the numbers accurate now that I actually know what it's going to be.
I have no
Ma-
problem with that.
I don't, yeah, I think that's a smart fiscal move.
Yeah.
It's just out of curiosity, this estimated 1.31, does it have anything to do with pushing more and more of the costs back down?
It's
The
pushing
school
more
system.
cost onto the town. And I actually look back at the last 10 years. This is the most it's ever increased in the last 10 years.
Mhm.
It was,
Really?
yes. Because I looked at that, I'm like, well, the last 5 years we had 0.33, 0.21, 0.4 something. Like, okay, I'll put 0.5 since I don't know what it is. Yeah, so this year over, because I looked at our financials, this is the largest increase it has been in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that, Councilman Winkler.
You said it makes sense to do that.
Councilman-
So
Okay.
that's one change. Okay.
All right, next item on the agenda is make sure the letter of support. I had Craig Renner reach out to me and ask for a letter of support from the council. They are doing some much needed renovations on the ground and first floors, ensuring it continues to provide the high quality medical services for our residents, which we rely on. I believe it is a $1.3 million bond that they are asking for, and hopefully you have had an opportunity to look at the letter of support. If you have any edits, corrections, that's fine. I can entertain that. And I am looking for a consensus, if there are no changes, to move this forward so that I can get that out. Councilman Winkler, any edits, changes?
No changes. Like I said, as I mentioned before the meeting started, it just seems to me an odd thing that we're to request us to sign a letter. It's kind of like, will you vouch for me?
They asked
can
the
I-
county as well.
Can I get a letter, that we're good? And, I mean, it's only 1.3 million. Yeah, it just struck me as a little odd, but no, I'm fine with it.
Thank you. Councilman Challenger,
No changes.
Councilman Jenkins.
No change, but I'm glad you clarified the amount because that wasn't in the letter. Just
Yeah.
curious of the amount. And just for the future, because I won't be here, sitting here anymore, but I'm just curious to look at in the future. And I understand why they do this, but to add on to what Councilman Winker just said, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just me, and that's fine too. It would be really nice if they could plan these kinds of things and come talk to us and present it to the public. So everybody kind of knows what's going on per se. And in past places where I used to work, they would do that. They would say, hey, when I worked for Tri-County Council, I had everybody coming to me as the executive director saying, well, we want you guys to sign off on it. And I said, well, guys, guess what? I'm not authorized to do that. I have a board of directors who are all the elected officials. And so if you want that's great. I'll take it to the board and you guys can come talk to them and they'll make that decision. Well, some of them didn't like that. And I said, well, I'm sorry you don't like it, but that way everybody kind of knows. So I would just hope in the future that, and again, this, I'm sure this is a worthy process and that's great, but it would certainly be, I think, beneficial to them or anybody else in the public to know, oh, by the way, the town's behind this project, particularly with, and it's a state bond, right?
Yes.
And so I guess it's passed, or do we know yet?
No, it won't be until next year. This
Let's do
is
it for next year.
it
All
for
right.
next
See,
year.
Okay.
So they won't even hit until fiscal year
Okay.
27.
Other than that, drive on.
Essentially, it's certificate.
Well,
Yeah.
kinda, yeah.
And you know, one thing that we always hear about growth in La Plata is it's a strain on some of our services, especially
This
the
one,
hospital.
Yeah.
And so I am glad that we're able to support that. All right, traffic impact studies.
I'm interested in this and, this ordinance is. This ordinance is simply moving it forward to ensure its alignment with the existing code by codifying, the, traffic impact study that is within chapter 173. The town seeks to clarify and streamline the review process for both applicants and the board to ensure traffic impacts are thoroughly assessed and that any necessary road improvements are identified early in the development process. And this would be reviewed by the town's planning commission as part of the development application process. And this will also, you will be seeing this again when we look at the adequate public facilities.
So one thing that we hear a lot about is traffic. And did we plan for this? And so on and so forth. If you read our code, there is a traffic study involved with this. This has been going on. Director Harrington was working on this, and Celia looked at this as well. And this is where our attorney has looked at this. This is just aligning with what we already have in chapter 173. It's expanding upon it, saying that you all must do this instead of saying it's questionable. All right, you can do this. This is a must. We need to make sure that all new development our infrastructure can support that. So that's where this came upon. Questions from council? Go ahead.
I'm going to defer to my,
Inner?
to the old plan.
the old guy. So is it fair to say that this is required now when the planning commission or the staff reviews projects? Developers submit traffic studies.
It is not required now. It is an option.
And this would make it a requirement.
This would make it a requirement.
But in the past, I've seen where the planning commission or the staff has reviewed traffic impact reports.
Have required it, yes.
And who reviews them? We're going to hire a consultant,
A traffic engineer.
traffic engineer.
Mhm. A
And-
consultant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was what was in the fee schedule
Right, that's
as
what,
well. So it will be,
it'll pay, hopefully offset each other.
It'll
They
be
will also-
passed on
Yeah.
to the applicant, yes.
And, okay. Again, I guess I'm just, was confused the way it said emergency, yet we already do it, so I'm not quite,
it's to make it a requirement.
Requirement.
Okay.
It's that one word.
and again, I would just editorialize it, so I hope the planning commission really does enforce that. Because in past sessions that I would watch, before I was elected and after I was elected, there was a former planning commission member who brought up traffic. And frankly, he got kind of shoved aside. And so I'm hopeful that this is a big issue and that they do it and fully admit that it's a little complicated because we have town roads and we have state roads and then we have county roads. And so we got to make sure that the developer, when they do one, they understand that and the state sometimes is a little slightly different. That's why I asked the question, what is the source of the LOS level service standard? I mean, I know it's a traffic engineer manual, but I think the state has a slightly different requirement for level service and maybe the county does. So I'm the same. We need to pay attention to that in the future because we are, and some folks, not their fault, they don't understand that we're impacted. We don't own all the roads that they drive on. And I have to keep telling, they would know that, but I have to just tell people that, oh, by the way, Glen Albin, no, that's the county road. We don't, so.
Yeah, the major roads in town.
So again, I just hope that the planning commission really does fulfill that activity and make this a real hammer.
And I think that they would have to if it is
In code.
in code now, so they have to follow that.
I had a question, just clarification. So I guess I'm a little bit confused because usually when we have changes or modifications, the strike through indicates, in the document, what's being changed or modified. Is it, because it already says shall file an application to the planning commission, but I don't see the difference. I mean, it's got the code numbers that are different in here. But I was wondering what language that we were changing in the actual document that requires them to do the traffic impact study versus what was there previously. Is it just that we're putting it in a different code section or chapter, or is it particular phrase that is different?
I see what you're saying. It still says shall file.
And so was it may, or what, are we changing it to shall? I don't know. Because if that's kind of a broader question, if it's already in there as shall, and we're not following it as shall, or our commission isn't, because I know for certain that folks that have worked on those boards said so-and-so came in without a traffic study.
Yep.
Right.
And
And it
this is
was not-
requiring them then. Celia's on. Hi, Celia. Celia, you still there? You're muted.
Yes, I had to unmute.
Thank you very much. Was this an oversight and it should say must or
Will.
will,
Well,
shall?
shall is indicative of must,
Okay, so
Right.
it is saying that they shall file.
but my question is that usually the strike through indicates a change. That
Oh,
that's
that could have been.
through. So I don't know if this is what we had and it's just not being followed, or if this is new to that's replacing a different word may or something like that.
Celia, this is all new. This was not, it just said traffic impact study and it didn't define any of it. That's what this is. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it just said the words and didn't say anything when,
So I guess section F
F is-
defines it.
Mhm.
The way I'm reading this is that F was the only thing being added to the existing legislation minus the strike throughs, which is being removed.
Celia?
Yes. I'm looking for the section that they're making reference to. Could somebody repeat that section?
Line 52, under 173-90 procedures, under emergency ordinance 25-03.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, Cecilia, I thought my microphone was on. Under the emergency ordinance, if you're looking at the agenda on Civic Clerk, it's page 36, under 173-90, under procedures. If you go down under item B, line 37, line 40, number 1, each application shall contain the name and address of the applicant, the name of the project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The question is whether if that's existing, because there would, if it's new, it would be capitalized. If it's removed, it would be strike through, correct, Councilman
Right,
Trolinger?
but Councilman Winkler, you noted it. So I guess our questions, section F, that's all new. Is that right? Because that is all capitalized. Or is there besides the strike throughs on the changes of the codes, is there anything else
I'm sorry, I'm still having a hard, oh, I see. Okay, F. For all developments expected to generate 35 or more peak hours calculated in accordance with the most recent edition of the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Engineer Traffic Impact Study conducted within 1 calendar year immediately preceding the application date. That is new language.
Okay.
And the rest is in code in 173? I might have misspoken, I'm sorry.
73.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's the only
Addition.
addition, and there's the strikeout where they were.
And thank you so much. And Ms. Minor, so I think my understanding is that they would pay for the study. We would pick the consultant.
Yes. They would pay for the study and it's,
No, no, they're- you have- do it.
yes. And they would pay for that,
Right.
for the review.
We want to traffic study and just bill that to the developer. But we get an unbiased. Probably a 10-to-1 that the developer hires a traffic study. They're gonna hire one that gives them the results that they want.
That is a very astute
Um,
question because there's been a lot of written in recent years about that very issue.
Yeah, I
Then it
mean,
goes through our engineer to look at when they submit it.
yeah,
And
You're getting two sets to look
if it
at.
says shall though, does this mean, and maybe we're getting in the weeds here, but let's face, does that mean it's been required all this time and just we haven't been requiring them to do it?
Don't think so. Best practice, yes, but section F is all new,
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
right? So that's what we're
Okay.
looking at with the,
so it's truly defining what it is.
What is industry standard, Cecilia? Is she still on?
Yes.
What is industry standard for a peak hour trip? Is the county required, 25 and we're doing 35? Does the county require 10 or what would you consider to be industry standard at 35? I'm just curious. I'm unlike my colleague sitting to the right of me. I'm not a planner, so I don't know these. Do you know?
There isn't an industry standard. It is developed by the individual agencies. And 35 is a number that was in researching numerous other APFOs. It was a number that came up relatively frequently.
That was actually, that was going to be my next question was, who is, are we patterning it? Is everybody else more stringent or as stringent or less stringent, I guess is it. And last thing is the time frame within 1 calendar. Do we need to put anything in there lest somebody pick, if you do a traffic study on the Bay Bridge in January, it's going to be a whole lot different than a traffic study in July. And I bet you I could come up with a traffic study in January that would suit my needs versus a traffic study in July. I mean, I think it's a legitimate question. Do we need to dictate the time frame for the study?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Usually the first step in a transportation study is some type of scoping meeting with the planning office and the engineers, and they agree on the period of time that's going to be studied, the hours that are going to be studied, the intersections, the road segments, everything that's going to be studied. And that is agreed to. So it's during that period of time.
Okay.
And generally studies that are conducted during the summer are not accepted.
Okay, no, that's what I wanted to hear is that it is a legitimate, valid, and there is input from all parties involved as to the scope, the when, the how, the why, et cetera, rather than, like I said, to use my analogy of, you know, summer versus winter on the Bay Bridge, because there's a little bit different traffic going across the Bay Bridge. Thank you, Cecilia. I appreciate it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, just an observation, because the times are changing even here in La Plata, and that this looks at cars. This looks at intersections. And roads are also meant for everybody to travel on. And so I would hope in the planning commission and their deliberations, just don't look at the traffic, but they look at pedestrian safety and cycling and sidewalks and other forms of transportation other than just getting in a car and driving someplace. And I give you a good example of that, what's happening in Pine Grove. Through their master plan, to their credit, you know, the entrance they've built off Charles Street and the entrance they're building off of Rosewick, they have the hiker biker trail next to it. And so we should be looking at, in my view, as a planner, we should be looking at that as the total transportation, not just car centric. Okay. And particularly for these, where a project where we have infill projects so that people can walk places and they can ride their bike. That also includes consideration of how you design an intersection. They look at a traffic signal and that's it. Well, there's more to it than that now. And I know people don't like this, but maybe we don't have the occasion here, but traffic circles or rotaries are, because I can give you the data and studies that show it's more safe. So anyway, I'm just suggesting that we just need to be have more consideration of pedestrian and safety and hiker, biker and walking, other forms of transportation other than just the car.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
in the scoping meetings that usually take place before the study is conducted, one of the things that is agreed upon are things like transportation demand management and transportation systems management, to look at how much bus traffic you might be expecting, how many bicycle trips you're going to be generating, how many pedestrian trips you're looking at, pedestrian access, pedestrian linkages. So all those things are factored in, and it's actually to the benefit of the developer to include those things, because it reduces the number of trips on the road and therefore reduces the impact on intersection capacity and makes it easier for them to pass their APFO.
Well said. And then one final thing, maybe for future, in terms of the subdivision regulations, I would suggest looking at reducing or minimizing whatever one-way, somehow limiting development where you have only one way in and one way out. And I think the county may have a ordinance where up to a certain number of dwelling units, you need a second access point. And we have at least 2 or 3 of those here in the town of La Plata. That's not really good for safety, particularly during an emergency, where fire and rescue vehicles and folks trying to evacuate have only one way to get in and out. So we need to be in my view, need to be very, very aware of that. And somehow we need to fix that in our subdivision ordinance. And there are examples we can go get.
Any other comments? So I'm looking for a consensus to move this to legislation. Councilman Winkler,
Yes.
Councilman Trollinger,
Yes, I do. Just brief comment. I think it's helpful that this is codified. I don't think this takes any away from our traffic engineer that we consult with, whether it's Mr. Kendrick or otherwise. We entrust them to go to those deeper levels because they're familiar with us and our goals. I would just say that it would probably be productive to allow the planning commission the understanding that this is not, this is the floor, right? This is not, if they comply with a traffic study, then it's approved. They've got to review it with
Mhm.
fresh insight and go into the aspects that Councilman Jenkins talked about. So I approve codifying this.
Councilman Jenkins?
Yes, and I would echo the comments by Councilman Trolinger.
And I am as well. So we will move that forward to legislation. All right. Next. If we aren't hired enough now, we get the real thing here, the adequate public facilities. So you have right here in front of you. Yes,
It comes with highlight
Red line.
yes, yes.
tabs. Oh, this is-
I do too. I like writing on it and highlighting. So what you have, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this. You have heard for 4 years that there's been a draft. There was a draft. And then we had another planner come in and look at the first attempt and realized that wasn't where we were going with this. So that was scrapped. And a new one was being worked on. So this is a product of putting together a first look for this council to see an adequate public facility summary. When you have this 8-9 pages, it's an overview of, it's not the meat. The meat is in the ordinance. So it's kind of like when you get your quick guide for a car and it says your radio knob is here and your blinkers are here. But if you want to know more about the nuts and the bolts, you're going to go into another manual. That is your ordinance. And these are samples. You can see it says sample on it. This is your first way of looking at it. And redlining it, chewing it up, doing whatever you want, and making this a workable product. So with that said, hopefully you all have had an opportunity to look at this. And I will go with, we can go piece by piece with this, introduction, where applicable, so on and so forth. If that's the will of the council, or we can just go, if you have questions, we can go straight to those. Piece by piece?
Can
Yes.
I have a question? So
Sure.
of course, a lot of these, I don't want to call them recommendations, but guidelines are coming with ratios and numbers, because there's got to be some metrics for standard, right?
Right.
What input has our town staff had on what's being presented, specifically police department, public works, stormwater management, et cetera? Like how, I know this is just a draft, but does this come with blessing or numbers or ratios by these departments as well? Or even just the language itself?
The language has been looked at by the planner and the attorney. And the numbers have not been vetted with the police and stormwater, because this is, we have it on paper. And then that would be step number 2, to look at all of the numbers being, if the language is what we like, then we get them to put in the numbers that may or may not coincide with that. The schools have been looked at. That's from ours. Roads and traffic, water capacity. That's going to have to, as you say, finally be able to purchase water from the system. Sewer capacity. Those were pulled from, both of those have been vetted on that. Police protection, there isn't a method yet here, but it would be here. It's just reference.
On the ordinance, there's a number.
Yep, the ordinance does have a number. That's where the meat is. So I'm going to ask first if, try to make it so that we have some type of path here. Have you had a chance to look at the guide? The guide is just an overview. Do you need to go through .1.2. Do we need for you to, for us to brainstorm tonight and at our next meeting have, meanwhile, corresponding or whatever questions you may have, take it apart even more? What is the will of the council?
I have a question, if I could,
Sure.
on the summary. There are many references in each of the sections, and I know I sent a bunch of questions to the council. And so I don't know whether, I mean, I'm glad we got something here finally, but I guess I'm just not clear, and I'll just quote one thing. It says it said the quote, "The town will develop a road and traffic manual with the assistance of a professional traffic engineer to ensure necessary detailed metrics and other related information." There's many other things that the town will do. So my question is, when are we going to do those? And shouldn't that be at least in progress or at least close to a conclusion before we actually have an APFO?
I think they work in conjunction on that. So we have to have something, we have to have a guideline on this. We haven't had that before. So now what are we telling our staff and the developers? This is what we are guiding by. That's what our adequate public facilities guide.
And that's, I understand. I get that. I guess I just, and missed, I'm not sure I understand the connection, because we say we're going to do something, but it's not here in the ordinance yet. I mean, there's no metrics that says we did these things, that says, well, we have a manual that says, quote, "Necessary details, metrics, and other related scientific data used to properly measure and gauge traffic impacts." That's just one example. That are used to properly measure and, so when is there a game plan or a projected completion of these many studies or many analysis to determine our metrics?
So the
that are in the
traffic
sum-
one is very easy. We just had a consensus to
Correct.
move it forward. So now there will be, if it passes legislation, there is a metric there that is totally outlined, and that's your traffic.
But I don't see any for the rest of them. I mean, I don't see it for police, fire and rescue, parks and recreation.
And that's why we're here today, is we are going through this to help get a document that is going to be put up for public, it'll go to the planning commission, and then it will be put
Yeah.
in for.
That was my
a-
next,
Wouldn't it be helpful if the planning commission was
that was my
here
question. That was my
to,
question.
to kind of offer their input, insight, blessing, thoughts, ideas, suggestions? Because I am, like Councilman, I'm caught up on the lack of discernible metrics. Go ahead, Councilman Fallon.
I feel like it's premature to even bring in the planning commission, because what are they evaluating? We're evaluating concepts, right? Like
Mhm.
police protection is important. Okay,
Mhm.
we don't need an APF to say that, right? I mean, the ordinance outlines that 2 officers per 1,000 residents. I don't know if that's adequate or not. I would have to hear from the police department, right? Wastewater treatment plan, I appreciate the outline, but there's no, it's skeletal, right? Like you said, it's a draft, it's helpful. I don't know what condition this was in before now, because I was under the understanding that with Director Harrington, she was working out essentially the numbers, and she had a grid. And, it lined up with the developments and the water usage and the tables that we had. And, apparently that's not the case, but we did have, when she would report to us, we did have data and numbers and grids. I don't know what this does ultimately. We're not. Yes. I mean, like schools, we all acknowledge we don't have any control over the schools. That's probably the easiest one, right? But you know, the packet itself is helpful in that it's got an outline of what it all involves, but the meat.
Celia, do you want to weigh in on this for the numbers? Because they just weren't made up. They came from somewhere. Celia, are you still there?
Sorry, I was silenced.
There you go.
The numbers all generally come from some industry standard metric that sets forth what ideal ratios and measures should be in place to test adequacy. For example, we already have a pseudo test of adequacy in the subdivision and development regulations that require that a certain amount of parkland be dedicated or some combination of private recreation facilities or fee in lieu. There are different ways of measuring police response. Police response can be based on a ratio of police officers to population, or it can be related to response times. The same is true of fire and rescue. The challenge with doing police and fire and rescue is usually adequate public facilities are meant to provide or mitigate impacts on public facilities and not necessarily public services. So in dealing with police and fire and rescue, you have to be able to ideally tie them in together with something that will one day result in some type of expansion, physical expansion of the facilities. The transportation numbers are very standard. There was a question Mr. Jenkins asked about the levels of service. Those are all standard throughout. And the only difference is which level of standard a community adopts as being considered passing and failing. I can't recall if there are other specific questions about numbers or tests, but those are just a few of the examples of things that would be tested and already have some form of metric to balance the test against.
Thank you, Celia. So I went through this with a fine tooth comb and I had my suggestions. And they align very much with you, Councilman Jenkins. So the first thing that I had is the clear definitions and metrics. So I think that one thing we need to do is, as Councilman Jenkins says, level of service is one of them, and adequacy. Those are the documents in there. Those are very vague words. It needs to be structured more performance evaluation models for each types should be clarified. So we do have solid numbers on those and we can go back. So that was one of my suggestions. I have 6 of them. Phasing of development. This allows for phasing of development if the facilities are deemed approaching inadequacy. So again, this needs clear guidelines on how to handle partial capacity in each phase. I think that the language could be perceived as too flexible. And I think we need to have, it would benefit more to have thresholds, again, measuring. Water and sewer, that's a big thing, the capacity, what are the specifics on how this model will be implemented? They said there's a revised water usage model. I know that that is currently being worked on right now, but as we all know, there's this one, this section's a little tough right now. And also, the section would be better to address water conservation methods or techniques as part of the long-term sustainability, which I don't think address this. Public safety, fantastic. It has a ratio to officers, which we would have to make sure that that is a adequate number, but how will we plan to integrate future technological advances or shifting in policing? You know, this would be a document that can be changed over time. But that's one of the things we need to think about for the future. And also fire and rescue services, they rely on volunteer organizations. Well, what happens if that goes away? How do we address that? School capacity, that is, I think there needs to be a more concrete timeline for reevaluation. We do that every January. And then the impact of parks and recreations. The draft outlines the need of a comprehensive park improvement and expansion plan, but it does not indicate how this plan will be integrated with community feedback or how developers will be incentivized or required to contribute towards park, especially in terms of maintenance costs. That's a huge thing. And then we may want to consider expanding the approach to include both active, meaning sports fields, and passive, like green space, for a wider range of community needs. Mitigation measures section could benefit from specifying guidelines for developers on what types of mitigation strategies are acceptable and how will they be evaluated. Again, missing metrics. And then financial impact. It's mentioned as a component for determining whether a project should proceed under current conditions such as funding infrastructure improvements. I think we need more details or a template on for how developers are expected to provide funding or contributions for these improvements. So I had, those were mine going through these, and as I said, ad nauseum. I mean, I spent hours upon hours looking at things that I could that could enhance this facility APF summary and as well as the sample ordinance. I heard from Councilman Jenkins. What other things that do you all see that need to be addressed that we can go back and incorporate it into our next session with this?
I think that, like everybody has mentioned, that this is a very rudimentary template. I think we need to get into the specifics as we've bantered about. I would like to see, and we've had just a little over 72 hours to review it. I'd like to see what happens when a development sits on the books for an elongated period of time and things change. There's to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but there's nothing in there about, I thought there was a 120-day time frame for moving forward in the initial phase. But what happens when planning and zoning approves and it just languishes, or the developer just decides to sit on it for a number of years? Is there anything in there that kind of forces their hand? That says, look, you're not going to get something tied up and sit. Somebody else comes in, takes up your allocation because it's available and somebody else can use it. And then next thing you know, somebody who's been sitting on the books for 20 years arises and says, guess what? I'm here and now I'm ready to proceed.
That's a great point.
I think that needs to be very well thought out and specified in the plan whatsoever, that, that there has to be a time frame for moving forward with the project. Reasonable accommodations can be made to change the scope of a development. I think that's all. I was glad to hear that under Parks and Recreation, things like sports fields and I enjoy green space as much as anybody. I think we're playground out. I think that we don't really necessarily, I mean, if a big development comes in, obviously there's going to be playground equipment available, but I think that there can be more done to incorporate recreational activities besides a jungle gym and a hiker biker trail. But that's the specifics that I would like to see, where if you want to do X, you have to do Y before it gets moved forward. And I think establishing some very clear metrics by which people can say, okay, I know that if I want to do this, I got to have all of this ready, willing, and able to go, or you know what, this project's not going to work. I need to look elsewhere. I think we need to be willing to work with the developers, but I would venture to say that the vast majority of town residents would agree that if we're cutting the pie up, the town has gotten the short end of that division for the last 8 or 10 years. And that's just my opinion, but I would just think that there's a large handful of residents in the town that feel as though that when that pie got divvied up, we were left with the short or the smaller piece.
What do you, your mic's not on.
I think your questions about the project, and I believe in the plan, interim plan director can correct me, but I believe there's a clause in our subdivision regulation that says they have to be, their preliminary plan really has to be renewed after X amount of time. And I don't know what that amount of time is. So that's probably a starting point, start that process.
It's 1 year when they.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
Prelim.
And in my comments, and I attached something about fiscal analysis, because there's a template that I found in Fate, Texas. That's a one sheet spreadsheet. You plug in the numbers, and perhaps that's a tool that staff can use to determine what the physical impact of a particular subdivision could or could not be. And again, you'll probably nod your head the wrong way again, but if we had had information back in 2024 from the land use study, we could have had that information available to us about what development costs.
And that's what I put in too, because I
Because
was thinking about you.
Because
and-
that's exactly what that study is supposed to do.
But the financial impact
Well-
is, I think that is fiscal financial impact. I think that's very important to have in the APF.
Because it would have, and again, you'll see, because I've seen it because I used to work on this stuff, you'll see different land uses generate different revenues
Absolutely.
and services.
Yep.
Also infill versus, for want of a better word, sprawl. So there's a lot of nuances, but again, I just think there's a lot of new stuff and new information that the town can use and leverage that. So we really get a handle on what does it cost us? What does it cost development to the town? Because you'll see in generalized terms, mostly single family on medium-sized lots, they don't pay for themselves. And what I mean by that is they don't generate enough tax revenue to pay for the infrastructure. Now, we're lucky here because we don't build the schools, but it's still a big number for us anyway. Because I think the latest county budget they're being proposed, it's somewhere between 45 and 50% of the budget is schools.
Wow.
And this is just an editorial comment from me only. I'm still perplexed why we have a school allocation thing in our ordinance, because we have nothing to do with their schools, okay? Any developer has got to go to the county and go through that process. They use their school generation rates, they pay their fees, they go, and they have to wait in line like everybody else. So I don't quite understand why we have that, but that's here the now. That's just an editorial comment.
So, in addition to the fiscal impact
Mhm.
and metrics, which
Mhm.
we're all about, which
Mhm.
we have really not done a good job on. Is there anything else when looking at the APF study, summary here, that you think should be in there?
Well, I'll probably find something later because I'm going to go back and find examples, which I've done before and forwarded before.
The next few weeks,
Mhm.
because our next meeting's on the 22nd, if maybe in the next week, so you have a week to review, to look at, so that this can be incorporated in as a draft and saying, okay, here are some ideas that you all came up with. Now let's see what it looks like when it is in a summary form.
And I would just piggyback from Councilman Winkler that I would encourage two other things. Number one, planning commission review.
Absolutely.
And that would frankly, to me, suggest, because we did this a couple of years ago and unfortunately we didn't do it again. We had a joint meeting with the planning commission. And I would suggest for the future council that they do that every year or maybe every 6 months or something. So everybody, pardon my thing, so we're all on the same sheet of music. Because I think there's, in my opinion, that there's a disconnect here.
You brought, and I don't know if this is an APFO thing to incorporate, but you brought up something because something that I've been adamant about, and like you just said, to have planning and zoning come before the council and have a joint meeting. That was apparent to me very early on. The other thing is, can we put in an APFO for the developers to have either a regular touch point, a hey, this is who we are, this is what we want to do. And, okay, whether it's a yearly, a quarterly, just something to hold their feet to the fire to say, hey, whether it's just a who you are and who we are or who the council is, so that the right hand and the left hand are actually in the same room and can know. I mean, there's a novel concept, right?
Are you talking about ongoing development?
No, I think, yeah, from an APFO, it is that, and I don't know, this is where my ignorance will show itself. Is that something that's either in an APFO or can be included in an
Celia,
APFO?
she's unmuted. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I don't think that belongs in an APFO. I think the better place for it is developers are encouraged to do a preliminary, before they submit their preliminary plan of subdivision, to do a preliminary meeting with the staff to go over what they're planning to do, and they can sketch out the development review process. I think that would be an opportune time for the development team to meet with the council and get to know each other and get to understand the development and make some desires or some concerns known.
How do we hold them to bring them back to the table, so to speak?
Once they start construction?
Yeah, I mean, or in the early stages of review, I think there's a level of frustration in the community of something was approved or something was done years ago, and I have no recourse, nothing to say, no input, no, I don't want blue shutters. I want green shutters. And it's a take it or leave it kind of, and from our own standpoint, we've been trying to get DR Horton
Correct.
to the table, just if nothing else, to have a conversation about
Correct.
things within the town and
Mhm.
and all. And I agree with Cecilia, that the APFO, that's why I
Agree.
asked the question, is not, maybe this isn't
So
the right venue for that, but
The good
certainly.
thing with a subdivision that is as large as Pine Grove is that they have to come in front of the planning commission for every neighborhood. So now, do we expand upon that? And do we have council there as well? We're invited to all those meetings. Do we have council there? We could, but that is where their master site development plan has been already approved. So now they're going into the little segments on that, their preliminary plans. And you're right, maybe it is more of a joint effort between council and planning, because ultimately we're the elected body that we're held accountable for what the planning
Last
commission
time I
does.
looked, planning and zoning doesn't get elected.
Correct.
Only one person on there sits there that's elected. So that is, that's a great point to make, and that's something that hopefully.
And again,
Council is
the
coming.
to add on to that, I mean, and this is just an example. I mean, Pine Grove is what, 10 years, whatever it is, multi-phase, multi-year. And so to me, at a minimum, they are, if I was them, I'd come here and just say, here we are, this is who we are, this is what we do. But more importantly, they could say, we've done X, A, B, C, D in these neighborhoods, and we're doing this now, and we're looking at this. And then they could kind of give us a summary of all the things they've done, but that also gives us and the staff, and particularly the facilities, what they're looking forward to as they phase this project over a number of years. And
It's communication.
and I've had expressed to me many times in the last 6 months, the complete frustration of not knowing what's going over there. Because they don't, most of them, and this is not their fault or anybody's fault, but they much rather go to, I would think, to a town council meeting to hear the developer than going to a planning commission meeting.
And
Okay,
here's something to think about too, with a big subdivision like that, or steeplechase that is.
That's another.
That is going, or Agricopia that's still
Mhm.
building.
that's the next
So
page.
we adopt, we're not adopting, but I'm gonna do a hypothetical. We adopt right now, this APFO is live and ready to go. Are those subdivisions grandfathered in? How do we approach that? So they've got another section coming in. Do we say, okay, that's something that we have to think about. That's something that should be addressed in this
It should be.
APFO, that you're 3/4 of the way done, or you're 1/4 of the way done, and we now have a really good APFO, and you're up for neighborhood, Z.
Rules change all the time now.
And I think that's a legal question.
But I do think that,
Outstanding,
I think
too.
that is a legal question,
It
but
is.
I think that
Mhm.
needs to be
It does.
in this,
Mhm.
saying, okay, when this comes
Mhm.
free, you've got to comply with this.
Wouldn't that then require us to sit down if we're gonna go back and forth on this APFO and establish the performance metrics and all that, that we need planning and zoning and the town attorney in here to say, nope, legally you can't require that, or legally you have to phrase it like that. I think, we're all kind of are all on the same page of what we want the document to have in place, but a year and a half later, we still have just a very rudimentary outline.
But I think that what you have contributed, and same with what I have, we all hear the same thing, metrics, but this is a start. So now we start putting this into the summary, so that we can get these metrics in. It's got to start somewhere, and if we don't take the bull by the horn, it's going to sit there again and not get done. So at least we have something that could be redlined on there. And I appreciate the contribution into what to put in here. I have a lot of good things already and I'll capture that in an email to you all. So make sure that I got the right things, but.
I'd like to ask a question. So you posited the idea that in 2 weeks we might have something to chew on. It does not sound like, with the input necessary, that we will have anything to chew on in 2 weeks, because as stated by council, that we need department input. I don't think it's sufficient to say there is a reason for this metric of X. We need to see the source. I mean, any high school book report cites their sources, right? I just am, I'm not sure why this was presented in the state that it was with this stage. This was doomed to fail.
Spelling errors aside,
Spelling errors aside,
grammatical errors
which
aside,
we're all subject to be fair.
we are.
I mean, look, there was no possibility of this passing tonight.
Oh,
Right.
not even, there's
Right.
no intention of this passing tonight.
Okay, but-
This is a work session where
Okay.
you all have a product that we all have been asking for 4 years. And
But-
now you have this product, and what is your input?
We've got to,
Our input is we need to sit down with the town attorney and the planning and
Right,
zoning
but-
to establish the metrics.
but the idea was posited that, hey, in 2 weeks, maybe we'll have something to pass. There's
No,
a
no, no, no.
chance,
It was
right?
never indicated. This would be, all right, here are your, give us your suggestions. Now let's put it together. This is going to be oh my goodness, probably 4 or 5 meeting process to get this done. But it's got to go forward before it's even ready to go to public hearing. But if this is not the will of the council, of this council to weigh in on it next meeting, then we don't do it.
I'm, again, weigh in on what?
This is,
What more we need? Because we're gonna, as you stated, we're gonna be weighing in continually, as will next council. I think my frustration is, even in the last 30 to 45 days, what we were told as council, who are not in the day-to-day, and we have look, you're acting mayor and town manager. We were told that it's in the works. We have a draft. You're going to see it. You present us 6 very good ideas as to how this could be improved. And if this was the first time we were all seeing it, I get it. But you've been intricately involved with this for as long as you've been acting town manager as well. And my frustration is that when we present it, and I'm not gonna, like, your input is essential to getting this forward, because I think all of your recommendations were sound. I just don't know why it wasn't implemented, or at least attempted to be implemented before we got it. Because this has been a 3+ year process, and we get it in such skeletal format. We can continue talking about it. Of course, we would. We need it. It's been necessary. We've been told we've had a draft. We've heard of people reviewing the draft, and that we would get it when it was ready, right? That's what we were told. And now we get it, and it's not anywhere close. It is a start, but we thought we had already started with Director Harrington 3 years ago, and I understand it's not your fault. But I just don't understand why those ideas that were excellent weren't implemented so that we could have something to work with and step a little bit further in the process.
I wasn't working on the APFO because I had many other fires to put out that I've been putting out since July 1st. So making sure that the town runs soundly, we're dealing with litigation, dealing with all of that. So this, I left to others. So when I received it, that is where I took the time to read it and put on my mayor hat and not my town manager hat, and said, okay, thank you for the first go around. Now let's see how we can improve it. So I, as mayor, as one of 5 council, took my job when I received the APFO on Friday and started reading on Saturday then. And I had it on Friday, but I was at a conference. Started reading that and saying, okay, I think we could do this better. I think we can do this better. So I am part of the team here and not acting as town manager, because this was not high on my priority. We have other fires that we were putting out.
It seems like this should be high on our priority since we've been talking about it for 3 years plus. But I mean, we were told before Friday that the town attorney had it under review, and maybe I'm wrong, but I recall that you had it and we would get it when it was ready. And look, if you've never seen it since Saturday, so be it. That's part of the problem of not having a town manager getting us things that we are able to act upon. Because if a town manager presented this to us, we'd say, we don't have anything we need here, right?
So am I hearing that you don't want anything to do with improving the APF study, and it should go back to staff and have them give you a product that is ready for prime time with maybe some tweaks, maybe some spelling corrections or whatnot, and that should be there. You don't want to be, and I'm not trying to be,
Right. Yeah.
do you not want to be part of the process? Do you want to be part of the only approval?
I think
Or do you want?
What's helpful is presenting a plan that has what's needed, right? So we're going to be tweaking this along the way.
Right.
It has to be tweaked. But to get metrics, that seems basic. To have input from the police department about ratios for public
But that's
services.
that's standard, industry standard is what that is. And that's
Well, we
what,
don't have a response time in here. I mean, we heard that that's standard, right? So there's a lot that still has to get fleshed out. But without hearing from the experts on the criteria, what are we talking about?
well, you just did hear from the planner who's an expert, and she said that it was either per person, police per 1,000, or it was response time. And that's standard, that's industry standard. And
She said,
in this one was police per 1,000. That's what it was. That's industry standard. That's where that number came from. I don't think that this was put in, okay, let's just think of a number. They have, it's industry standard. This is where it's being pulled from.
okay,
So-
some source, right? Some source.
So,
That's
so
fair.
you want the sources cited. So that's fair.
I don't want sources and then go back to our departments with the information. And look, they may be wrong. That's okay. But this is, again, this has been in the works, and maybe it hasn't been in the works. We were just told it was in the works. And not, I mean, maybe everybody was told it was in the works and it wasn't. And that's maybe my disconnect, right? Is that the presentations were not accurate previously, or the representations to any of us, right? And so maybe that's part of my disconnect. And for that, I want to apologize, but of course, we're willing to work with it before it's prime time. That's how it gets there. But
This was important enough to me, and like I said, I have other fires to put out, that I wanted to bring it to this council. So you all had at least something to start looking at, to show that progress has been being made on that. Again, until you sit a moment in our staff's shoes to know what's going on, then they have been very, very busy, very busy. And we have been short-staffed.
Nobody's discounting staff
Right.
or their busyness, or I like Councilman Trollinger, I recall, and I could have it was prior to the town manager leaving, sitting in, so that would probably be in the May, maybe late April, May timeframe, that it was all but 2 sections were completed. And
I have never seen that.
no, that was in a one of our town. I'll now you're gonna make me go back and watch all the old and the former planning and zoning said all but 2 sections were done. And then maybe 3 or 4 meetings later, it was, nope, it's with the town attorney. He's just reviewing. And look, we're just, I think our level of frustration is that I thought what we were gonna be, that we would have a more polished and a more finished, if I'm hearing Councilman Trollinger, your expectation, not unlike mine, was a more finished or a more polished document with which to go through. I think that yeah, in 2 weeks, I'll have some additional input. That is in no way going to finish it.
Oh, and it's not intended to. This is a process.
It sure is.
Yep. But it is a start. And if it didn't come to you, who knows when it would,
Well, I would hope you would have brought it to the new council, but
well, yeah, eventually. But we have a new town manager coming in, and I am sure that he will have a look at this as well. All right, so if it's the will of the council to submit, to relook at this, to submit your suggestions. And we start adding on it from there. And I wrote down many of those from Councilman Jenkins and Councilman Winkler on that, and incorporate mine, and we'll see what we get. And it'll be, I would say, we're probably going to look at this 5 or 6 times before we have one that is ready to bring up to for public hearing. Just to set expectations. It is I can't even call it a draft. I call it a Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and say it. We've been dealing with a lot since July and some things that you were probably told prior to July.
Throw them out the window.
And we're starting over.
And that's
And I know we're almost a year out, but there's been a lot going on. So
You're well aware.
Something
Ah.
reset those expectations. So
unfortunately, yeah, I hate to be the one to say it, but we're starting over, resetting it.
But that's okay.
I'm the first to admit it, that,
Well,
there was a lot of things that
And
didn't get pulled across the finish line, and we're trying
so
to,
I applaud you for taking that responsibility, all of us, and having that transparency. If we start over again, let's have at it. And the new council can have at it. And so I applaud that, and I applaud that transparency.
and some of the things that you're saying about the previous APFO, some of the things you're saying, you did hear.
Mhm.
Yes, you did hear those. That doesn't necessarily mean it was interpreted the way it should have been. So we got a fresh start.
Yeah, we have a fresh.
Sorry,
start,
it
and
wasn't
here
my place
is-
to say that, but.
Thank you. And here is just consider it. Thank you, Michelle, that just consider this a fresh start that we are building upon. All right, so we have our marching orders on that, if you all would feel so inclined with that, which brings us to legislation. We're almost done, almost done.
Legislation, an emergency ordinance concerning chapter 173 subdivision and land development for the purpose of amending chapter 173 subdivision and land development by requiring traffic impact studies for proposed developments that may negatively impact transportation infrastructure and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt emergency ordinance 25-03, chapter 173 subdivision and land development? Anyone?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adopt emergency ordinance 2503, chapter 173, emergency ordinance regarding subdivision and land development to incorporate traffic impact study as discussed.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
So this, if adopted, this incorporates the changes, the strike throughs, which means it's removed, and the caps, which means it's new language in the ordinance.
Correct.
And this is going to then require it, not say, not maybe an option for so anybody comes forward when it takes effect, the developers have to submit a traffic impact report.
Correct. So I have a properly made motion with a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to new business and reports. Councilman Winkler.
I want to thank, first off, although I was not the ringleader, but I want to thank the town residents for their active participation in the La Plata High School Boosters Mulch Sale. It was a long and arduous day of delivering thousands of bags of mulch, but we got through it, and no, it is a testament to the residents of the town for their generosity too. And you can say this, whether it's the La Plata High School, whether it's the swim team that we saw, or the various other organizations throughout the town that the residents do are very actively engaged in that. So I want to thank them for that. Historic Preservation Commission met. We're moving forward with some plans regarding the La Plata Firehouse and a use study. We've also gone through and kind of solidified a standard for plaques to go on for any of the historic homes and businesses, just kind of a consistency among all of them. And the HPC is also looking into some years before the tornado, it was delved into and established a historic district or a historic area within the town. That was 25 years ago at least. So they are taking up the mantra of kind of reestablishing that and making sure that any verbiage in that designation is sort of either changed to meet our new if anything needs to be changed to recognize that historic designated area and all the appropriate what's the word I'm looking for? All of the appropriate regulations that go with that. So
Very
other than that,
much.
thank you.
All right, Councilman Trollinger.
I believe we got a planning or a People That Played a Beautiful meeting on the 28th of April. I did want to thank the Waldorf JCs for the event this Friday evening. It was called Seven Strong Hunters Tribute. I know I saw Councilman Winkler there supporting the families that were involved in the unfortunate plane crash at Reagan. They had over 500 people attend, and they raised a ton of money for these families. And they provided a great community service. We had a lot of residents there. We had a lot of actively involved community members that tried to funnel the grief and mourning towards positive action for the families involved. And I really appreciate how the Waldorf JCs put together a very strong and moving tribute to those families. So I wanted to thank Councilman Winkler for being there and for our residents and supporting those families.
All right, thank you. Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you. Well, our Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is tomorrow morning at 7:30. The only agenda item is a presentation discussion by a resident that is suggesting or proposing some kind of a draft plan for Tillman Lake projects, plantings and other things. So he's going to come forward and talk about it tomorrow morning at our meeting. Once that's done, we can obviously forward you that document once we're through the meeting. That's all.
Thank you very much. And I have, so we have, Mr. Robert High has served on our planning commission and he has resigned. So I would like, and his seat, his term expires on June 1926. I'm tired, 2026. Colleen Monosky is the alternate, so I would like to make a recommendation and a motion to appoint her to take the full-time position on the planning commission. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Oh, yes, sorry, discussion.
So, has all the planning commission members, including the one we're nominating tonight, have they taken the State of Maryland Department of Planning's planning commissioner course?
I do not have that information, but if she has not, well, they are required to within the 6 months there, but if she has not, then she will be required.
Because I've taken it and several times, and it's a valuable document to help the planning commission. Because people always ask me, well, why do you appoint, pardon the word, civilians on the planning commission? So I try to tell them, well, they go through this course. And so I have intimate knowledge of it. And so I would just, again, highly encourage every member to take that.
And it's required, so then, thank you.
But it'd be great if we could certify that they've all done it, so the public knows that.
That would, yeah, I'll take that under consideration because that is a good thing to have that. So we have a motion properly seconded. All in favor of appointing Colleen Monosky to the Planning Commission, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then I just have a couple things here. I know that Tillman Lake is open now and it is gorgeous, but you will notice that they will be working on the dock. There's one area on the dock that needs a little love and attention. So that they're going to look at that next week because it had some damage to it. The painting of our crosswalks was supposed to start this weekend and it's been delayed. So not by much, but I think it will be a couple weeks before that is done. We have a new town clerk that is starting on Monday. So that's exciting. And then, of course, put on your schedule, April 26th is Celebrate La Plata. So we will have a great day. The weather's supposed to be pitch perfect. Don't look because I have no idea. And we will have Water's Edge that will be entertaining our residents and their guests during that event. Oh, and April 22nd, we are going to really thank our volunteers. So if you serve on a committee, April 22nd, we will be having
Shaka Brew
Shaka Brew.
and Employee Appreciation Day.
And yeah, employee appreciation. You had me at Shaka. So it will be a coffee truck and it'll be really nice on that. So with that said, we do have a reason. We're not done yet, team. We have a reason to go into closed session. If I could have someone make a motion.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion for a closed session under statutory authority to close session section 3-305B1 to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of an employee, or official over whom it has jurisdiction. The topic being the town manager contract.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll do roll call. All in favor? If you're in favor, please say aye. If not, nay.
Aye.
You got it, Monica? Or you want me to get it?
Oh, well.
Sorry. Newbie on the job. Councilman Winkler,
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins,
Yes.
Councilman Trellinger,
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. Thank you very much. We will go into closed session and we are going to adjourn at 9:01 p.m. All right, guys, this is going to be a quick one, 5 minutes.